Members of the Controversy Corner panel discuss pertinent league matters.
Well, there's the, that's a bit of a, now, isn't that a surprise? I thought that was an actual cup, so good as the reproduction on the front of the Big League magazine. I really thought that was a cup we had in the studio that I didn't know about. And I was just about to say an odd word to my secretary about bunging things in without telling me. But that's on sale inside the ground, the Big League, the official organ of the New South Wales Rugby League. Great colour pictures and some excellent articles, as well as being the official program. Our guest today is the Australian captain, and I want to congratulate him on behalf of all the panels, certainly, and I think all rugby league fans around Australia, and those certainly in Sydney and New South Wales that are watching this show. George, accept our congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Well done on the basis of an Ashes win, first time up as a captain. That must be a great thrill.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Just let me ask you this question. How big a deal has it been for the Sydney Greek community that you've earned this honour of being Australian captain?
Oh, I think it's very important for the Greek community. I'm sure they're all behind me. I've received telegrams and letters from various people, including the Archbishop of the Greek Orthodox Church and several other prominent people like that.
Is he a rugby league fan?
Not that I know of. I don't even know the person. So. Well, he might be now.
He might be now, is right. Well, yesterday's performance, in my opinion, was in two parts. Good by Australia in the first half, and I think it would be unfair to the Englishmen to say anything other than ordinary by Australia in the second half. Did the boys have thoughts of today's round on when it got to 17-4 at half time?
Well, not really, but subconsciously it may have had a role. I think also, you know, at 17-4 we won the first test 35-0. 17-4 at half time, even though we tried not to be complacent and we talked about it at half time. Even when you ran out at half time, there was just a lull in the crowd. You could just feel it running out. And they started off well, and they've obviously had a good team talk at half time, and they scored two quick tries, which you know, put them right back in the game, and they got their tails up. But you know, full credit to our blokes. We came back and scored another try after that. So.
Well, the first test performance by Australia was so spot on. You know, it was such a perfect display, really. It would have been almost impossible to improve upon, and hard even to live up to, I thought, because I've never seen an Australian side play better than that first test.
Sure. Also, England prepared themselves a lot better for the second test. They went into camp 3 or 4 days beforehand, and they hadn't had any alcohol for about 3 days, so we'd heard. And
you mean that alcohol plays a part in rugby league players' preparation?
Oh, a little bit, yeah. And they were eating salads, and they weren't going out, and you know, they'd picked the defensive side basically. It was
one of them got married on Tuesday.
Yeah, but
he's got his problems.
Yeah. But they'd picked a very defensive side, obviously, to combat our attack, and that's why it was hard to penetrate for a while.
What sort of a blow must that have been to them to lose Knocker Norton at, you know, virtually hours before the game?
I think it would have been a big blow because, you know, Steve Norton's, I think, one of their best players, especially ball handling-wise. He made quite a few breaks in the first test, and he was obviously the man we had to watch.
Yeah.
But we didn't know about it until after we'd run out.
No, quite. George, in your opinion, obviously this is just a personal thing I'm asking you, what was the single great difference between your side, isn't that got a nice ring to it, your side?
I like the sound of
it.
it.
You like the sound of that? Your Australian Ashes winning rugby league side in '79 and the English side. Single difference.
I think discipline, which has been instilled into us by Frank Stanton.
Yeah, discipline. Right. I would have thought maybe pace, all-round pace.
Yeah, that's a factor. But I think the discipline that we've had drilled into us, as far as you know, punctuality at training, for any team functions, dress requirements, our attitude towards training, our preparation for the games, all takes a part.
All comes under the heading of discipline, doesn't it? Well, winning the third test, to make a clean sweep of it, be difficult in the light of Australia's win. I'm talking about the psychological aspect of it. You've won the Ashes, you've won the first two. That third one, could it be that England are going to bob up because of the apathy maybe of Australia?
Well, not if we've got anything to do with it. We want to be the first side ever to win 3-0 in Australia, or anywhere, I think.
That's really an ambition now of this team.
That's an ambition of this side at the moment, and we'll be going out there treating it as an Ashes decider.
Now, I know you have no say in selections, rightly so, but I want to ask you this question that you can decline to answer it if you wish, but I'd like to ask it anyway. Next week, Great Britain play in New South Wales. Are you personally keen to play in that game, or would you expect a different side other than the Test side to be mounted? Because virtually a state side would be the Australian team.
If fit, I'll play if I'm selected. but naturally it's been a pretty hard schedule over the last couple of months, and I'm sure a few of the other blokes would appreciate a week's rest.
All right, well, thanks very much, George. Let's have a look at some of the highlights there. Well, the other gentleman might like to ask George some questions as we go through looking at some of these things. And 24-16 was the ultimate score, of course. I personally thought the floodgates were going to open at half-time. I thought it was just a matter of by how far. I thought even in terms of another 35-0 score.
George, the scrums that were packed down yesterday, how different are they, the Englishmen packing as against the normal club side?
Oh, it's very different. They seem to, well, especially their hooker seems to lie on the ground all day, and I just sit on top of him, and usually you'll get a penalty for that, and in test matches they seem to get away with it for some reason.
You were surprised yesterday you were not given some penalties, George.
That's right, yeah, very surprised. And on one occasion I lifted my bottom off his face, and they got the penalty.
Well, you probably got penalised for lifting your bottom off his face.
I think in the first test he just sat down and turned around, didn't he, and faced the ball coming in. I don't think he had any arms over in a couple of the pack. But early in that game yesterday, George, I found it pretty hard to swallow that you'd never varied anything. We just kept plugging away up on their line, waiting for them to open up. I thought, maybe we would have gone out and chipped the ball or something early there to break up their defence. It seemed to me as if you tried to play the same pattern as you played in Brisbane, which was so successful, and it seemed to me the Poms expected you to play that. But, it just felt that you should have put one or two through or over the top.
Well, we scored a try off a chip, if you remember.
Yeah, well, that was probably the first one,
Yeah,
and the only one.
Yeah, well, it was there, and we scored. But I think Rod Reddy put one up over the top as well.
I'm talking about early in the game. You never went out with
early in the game we wanted to, obviously dominate the game, play it in their 25, hang on to the possession. We were winning the scrum, so I think we won the scrum 6-2 or something in the first half.
Is that a plug, Jordan?
That's, well, whichever way you like to see it. But things were going our way. We had the ball, so we were winning the scrum, so maintain pressure.
I couldn't see the strong defence of English there in the first half. I didn't think the defence was any stronger than I saw in the first test, in the first half of the match.
They held out pretty well early.
No, I thought there was openings. I thought they did go in 2s and 3s, which was much different in the first test. But there were still those swinging arms that went round the head and just waved at people running by.
That is something very strange, Col, is the fact that there was times I thought that there was no need for an extra Englishman to get involved in it. They had the tackle completed, and yet they still put themselves out of the play by getting onto the ground.
I was interested in George saying the atmosphere when you come out in the second half of the match, it wasn't there by the crowd, George,
well, you could feel it when you come out at the beginning of the game, before the first half. The crowd buzzes, and it obviously gives you as a player, a lift. And I think at 17-4 at half-time, the crowd was getting a little bit disappointed, possibly, and when we came out in the second half, you couldn't hear a whisper. And I think it possibly rubbed off. It was flat.
So atmosphere means a lot to a player.
It does, certainly does.
You acted as a pacemaker at that little business at the finish, I think, didn't you, George?
I tried, yeah. I was, trying to
when it was all over.
George Nichols away from the...
That's the first. You usually put a bit of stick on after the first whistle, not after the last whistle.
There speaks an old front row hooker type of player.
George, how do you rate the English performance, the English team performance, as against in the last test in England, or the last series in England? Have they lost any, or are they still the same side, basically, that you beat in England?
I think they're probably a little bit better side than the side we beat in England, barring a couple of players, obviously, like Nash and Millwood, who are good players. Obviously, in England, though, they get a pretty good go over there, and it makes it very hard.
Well, frankly,
so you got your backs to the wall in England.
Well, I think that I was disappointed with the English side. I've played against them. I've seen them in their natural habitat.
That's the most profound remark I've heard all day. I was disappointed.
No. I mean, normally the English pack, if they're lacking ability, will still show fire and sparks in a test match, and there was singularly lacking yesterday.
Well, a little bit came in when that replacement came in, Watkinson.
Yes,
he put in a little bit of stick.
I was talking to Englishman the other day, Fergus, and he said to me, remind Fergus of 1952 when they played St Helens. What happened over that match or something? He said there wasn't too much tackling that day in 52 or something.
Oh, I wouldn't think that. We got defeated by the test side because we didn't have the best side in that particular day. And it was the day before the test.
George Fairburn, I thought, strengthened the England side yesterday. He pulled off a couple of dramatically good tackles. This one on Larry Corrowa early on to my mind, was a classy tackle, the sort of a tackle you'd expect from Graham Eadie or one of the top-line fullbacks around Sydney. But this there is a fine tackle. That's good. And he did several very good things. I thought he strengthened the side.
One great covering tackle too on the other side of the field.
It makes you wonder what the English selectors were thinking of when they didn't have him in the team originally.
Yeah,
because
right
he arrived out last Sunday or something.
But I've been watching England football for 30 years now, and I've never seen a winger, an English winger, drop the ball in the clear in a test match. I searched my memory, and I still can't believe that I've seen an English winger do this. I don't know that he'd have even scored the try, but to drop a perfectly good pass, he probably would have gone within about 6 or 8 metres of scoring.
That was Neville Glover's corner.
Well, it may be something to do with the corner, but I wouldn't remind Glover of that. He's done some marvellous things since then. I think he's been on the rack for that, hasn't he?
He has.
Well, Mitch Brennan caught that ball like that. He juggled it. He's a juggler. He's probably not a circus.
Yeah, you're right.
player,
Mitch Brennan is a juggler.
Lorenzo's got to be the slowest wing I've ever seen in international.
We had one that was around about the stage.
I think Roy Mathias.
Mathias was slow. We had one used to play in the old days, George Hugo for Manly Warringah, who was about his pace, but my God, he never dropped the ball.
No, he's pretty hard man to stop too,
I
right?
saw him at City Tattersalls the other day having a sweat, and he's still as big as a house and muscles, and got muscles he hasn't even used yet first.
Well, I'd like to give credit to Rod Morris and the prop forward. I thought he had a tremendous game yesterday. You don't see much of Rod outside, but I did see him yesterday in 2 tackles. There were
Two covering tackles.
Two covering tackles down the middle. An old-time forward really doing all that tough stuff down the middle.
Now, the England try, this was no fluke. There was some good passing and some excellent individual skills there. Nichols, the way he pulled that ball in. The unloading to Joyner. How do you rate Joyner as a player, George?
Well, I haven't been overly wrapped with him in the past, but I thought he had a fair game yesterday, and
he's quick.
You know, yeah,
he can run.
He showed a lot more pace there than I thought he had, and backed up well. I think
He played well over in England, George, in
yeah.
those tests over there.
Yeah.
But over here, that's the first bit of form I've seen from him. But apparently he played well at Newcastle last Sunday.
I queried the Reddy as the man of the match. I thought the prop forwards, I thought Rodonicus, Price, I think all had better games than Rod, who played well.
Yeah.
But I was a little surprised with him being singled out there because...
Well, he scored a dramatically good try, and he did some of his usual standing up and unloading the ball. He does that better than anyone I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, dramatic in as much as the other 2 centres looked at him and let him run through the middle.
It was a crucial time too, I think, which is very important.
Yeah, well, you were only 5 points ahead. 5 points ahead of that stage.
Sort of sealed the game.
Was there any thought in your mind, George, that you're ever going to get beaten a game as a captain?
Only at 7:13, I was a little bit worried. You know,
And you couldn't stand the thought of going through a week of adverse publicity.
I couldn't handle losing.
And what, did you have to stir the team up, George? Did you have to stir them up at all as a captain?
Well, you know, behind the try line, we had a few harsh
Now,
words to say.
this must have been a disappointing try to you. The bad pass, one of the few errors that Alan Thompson made, initially Boosted's inability to fall on it, and Graham Eadie made quite a meal of getting to it here. He appeared to have plenty of time. We'll see this, I would have thought, on the head-on shot. Maybe we've got the head-on shot after. But Hughes gets his hand down while the ball's actually in Eadie's hand. He gets his hand down on top of it.
I think Graham tried to pick it up.
Yeah,
instead
he
of
picked it up and
forcing
dropped it.
Which was,
Did you have anything to say after that one?
I had a few things to say. I think the biggest fault there was, you know, we were attacking in their 25, and it happened 2 or 3 occasions in the first 20 minutes, and we dropped the ball at crucial stages.
Now watch Hughes' hand come in on top of Eadie's as the ball's in his hands, and it takes it out of his hands, literally.
A little upsetting when you give him 10.5 start.
Yeah, on behalf of the group that gave 10.5 points start, I'd like to say something.
You shouldn't bet on football, you know. This is not that sort of a game. All right, well, I think one player, Gratian, should hang his head in shame, if I'm correct, in the Reddy try, because he just stood still, and I know it's easy to criticise. Let's, you know, face it, Reddy's got extraordinary pace.
I'd say he was moving here.
But the little dummy, you know, it was a tiny little dummy, a little... that. And there, you know, Grayson just left for dead.
He's going, isn't he?
And Mick Adams too, I think.
I didn't see Adams there, but it was a bad one, and gave Fairbairn no chance to get to him at all. I mean, he should have been stopped early. There's number 10 was Grayson, wasn't it?
Yeah, number 10's Grayson.
I don't think any blame goes on the outside man there.
No, you're
the
right.
damage had been done on the inside, and Reddy at that stage knew he was going to score.
Doesn't gallop, does he?
He doesn't gallop much, does he?
the fastest I've seen him run all week.
If you're listening, Rod, that's your captain speaking. This is the captain speaking. And here we see...
A couple of incidents too, Rex, and players on the ground. You mentioned his name was Kerry Boosted. He must have very sore back and ribs today too, and an incident involved in the game. And
I'm surprised that there was nothing said about that.
I bet they're sore.
And we see the mediator at work here now, George Paponis, at the end of the game, when Rod Reddy and Graham Hughes had a minor altercation.
Eric.
Graham Hughes, I'm sorry, Eric Hughes.
No, it's not Eric Hughes. What's the one with me? Adams.
Adams was the man involved. You saw
Nick
and
Adams.
You came and put your arm around Nichols. What did you say to him at that point?
Well, I just told him to forget about it. I mean, you know, as a winner, you know, you might be able to get away with a thing like that, but I think as a captain, and at the end of the game, I don't think, you know, it was the right thing to do. Maybe Mick Adams had a grudge. Well, that's his business. But as a captain, I think, you know, George Nichols should have showed more responsibility.
I agree, George.
All right, well, we've come to the end of the first half of Controversy Corner. I just want to say that Kevin Juni's Run For Your Life shops announced the arrival of the new Adidas TRX competition jogging shoe. That's TRX. Now, the shoe features the famous waffle sole grip we're going to show you, plus soft heel wedge to absorb road shock. Limited offer for Sports Action viewers. With every purchase of a pair of jogging shoes, you'll receive a pair of jogging shorts free. Junction and Angel Arcade in the Pitt Street. We'll take this break and we'll be back. All right, well, let's go on with the games of the limited round from last week that we have. And the East and West game brought a smile to Ferris Ashton's face. A couple of things. Firstly, there was a penalty goal missed by Don Mosley that a lot of people argued about. A lot of players were reported as saying that it went over. Here's the goal. It was clearly disallowed by both the touch judges. You'll see officials. We had one up and one down occasionally.
Any player said it went over there's got to be blind.
Well, Ferris, you know, wouldn't be tendentious or parochial or anything other than very fair, would you, Ferris? Right. Then we've got this incredible try scored by John Harvey. I think Bobby Simpson would have been involvement for his side on that occasion. Now, the Boyd try. Well, let's have a look at this because you'll see clearly if he gave the correct decision. He was in the right position to serve.
But Gibbs picked that ball up and put it over the line then.
Yeah. Well, that can be a try.
Wasn't there a question? Well, if that ball goes backwards.
Knock on. Forward.
Went forward. It's got to be knock on.
Play it again.
Knock on.
Play it again, Sam. You want to see it again?
Oh, he'll never give up.
No. Re-killed, will you, Peter Moss? Will not give up. This former old featherless magpie, this fluttering featherless old magpie.
And after that reunion on Friday night, there's a few ruptured magpies, aren't there?
George, I've got to tell you about a remark Billy Smith passed yesterday, just while we're re-queuing that last item. Noel, who went to the reunion for Western Southern...
Anyway, give up.
Let's finish this story, George, because I know you'll enjoy it. Bill Smith said to him, Noel, you look terrible. Your eyes are bloodshot and red. And Kelly said to him, that's all right, you're looking at me and saying I look terrible. You ought to be on the inside looking out through it. So, that's Noel Kelly, 1979.
He hasn't recovered this morning either.
Only a lad.
And whoever's got Frank Stanmore's football, would you please give it back?
And congratulations to Tommy Radonicus too for his life membership at Western Southern.
Yeah, it's a very emotional moment, I believe. But let's get on with the motley here, gentlemen. Alan Clarkson was at Penrith and New quote, they tend to throw the rule book away at any time to let the game flow. Well, that to me is a very irresponsible remark from a very highly regarded former international. That to me is one of the big disappointments in rugby league around the world at the moment, that referees generally don't administer the rules the way they should be administered. They've allowed a whole heap of little irregularities and little things get into the game which never used to be there, and they've grown into big things like this mauling and holding down of players in tackles and total impediment of a man to get to his feet to score, to play the ball quickly. And I think it behoves us all in the public eye to make responsible remarks about things like that. I don't know what anyone else...
I support you, Rex, on that one. I was disappointed to read it from Arthur. Very untactful from his point of view too. Seeing he's got to play under Sydney referees too, I suppose. That's another point. If I was the coach, Terry Fernley, I wouldn't have thought Arthur said the right thing there. But I'm disappointed. No, I don't think you should rather the rule book away. I think they'd be enforced. If the rules are no good, we'll take the rules out of the book. But the rules are there, let's play to them.
George, while we're talking about that, do you feel that when you go to England, the Poms can do anything, via the referee? They get a pretty fair go, right? And you come out here, to say the least. Now, when they come out here, do you feel that our referees leave you in that position a bit?
Yeah, well, I thought a few incidents yesterday sort of went away without, being noticed by the referee or any action taken, and that's the sort of thing you tend to accept over there under the English referees.
You mean the knees and the... I presume you mean those two incidents.
A few incidents yesterday, and that's the sort of thing, you hope you don't have to cop in Australia.
All right. Well, let's just show you the number of times each club has been televised up until the 24th to 679. And here's the list coming up on your screen right now. I have coming up right now. Am I right? Is it a slight stretch, is it? We've got, at this point in time, up until last weekend, Balmain with 3, Canterbury with 3, Cronulla with 5, there it is, Eastern Suburbs 2, Manly 3, Newtown and North Sydney zilch, Parramatta 4, Penrith 2, Souths 1, St George 3, and Western Suburbs 8. So that's the breakdown of television games at the moment. But if Wests continue their form of last week, Noel, they may not be televised again for a week or two.
Until the semi-finals.
Until the semi-finals.
And just televise the grand final.
All right, well, let's get on with today's games. And Alan Clarkson's got us up to date with the ins and outs.
Well, I
West and South Sydney.
can't help you too much there about... I can't get anyone from West to find out about young Dora. He was in a little bit of doubt.
What about Les Boyd, too?
Les was okay.
Was he?
He said yesterday he was all right. He would play.
Eric Ferguson playing for South Sydney in a comeback after a hip dislocation, which must have been a pretty nasty thing.
Yeah. It's good to see him back in the field.
Yeah, it is.
Very good price.
Okay, who's going to win that Cole Pearce?
Well, I'm going for Western Suburbs in that ground, but Luke come over. Particularly, I think they will pick themselves off the floor this afternoon, particularly against South Sydney.
Alan?
Western Suburbs, my friend.
Western Suburbs.
I think West might be a little bit too big for South.
All right, Western Suburbs, we all go for them to beat the South Sydney side at Lidcombe. I don't think it's going to be an easy game by any means. I think that Souths might give them a bit of a fright. This is not a bad-looking South Sydney side that they've got out for today's game, that they have available for today's game. Manly and Penrith at Brookvale. Who's available and unavailable?
Graham Eadie is playing. Alan Thompson is playing.
Well, there'll be Hail Marys and thank yous over that one down there.
He had a nasty eye, Graham.
He got a finger in the eye when he dropped that bomb.
Yeah.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Was it bad?
Oh, I didn't see it after the game.
It was closed tight.
After the game didn't look that bad.
It was closed up tight.
Was it? Yeah. All right, okay. Manly and Penrith. Who's going to win that?
Well, I'm going for Manly down there, as long as they tighten up their defence and don't let the cat out of the bag as they left that, last 2 or 3 weeks. I think they should win it down
Yes,
there.
Manly. Manly.
Did you say Petherbridge is not playing for Penrith?
Petherbridge and Blacklock are both out.
Oh, blimey, that's a blow to them. Good.
Manly.
Ferris.
Even with the one-eyed seagull, they must win this clearly.
Noel.
Oh, yes, I think that with the help of their little band of supporters down there bashing the fence and...
Yeah, well, they had another meeting of the Manly supporters on Pittwater Road in a telephone box through the week, so they'll be all right. Cronulla, I'm going for Manly to beat Penrith, only because it's home ground influence and because Eadie and Thompson are playing, I hasten to it. The next game we've got is Cronulla and Eastern Suburbs, Cole Pearce. This is going to be a very interesting one. Alan, would you like to tell us anything you know about ins and outs?
Well, Steve Rogers is not playing. He's okay, but he's not playing.
Well,
strange, isn't it?
Is that...
Well, can I just tell you what the background on that is, if any of you are interested? Rogers was not selected for today's clash, and it is a top game and a very important game, as you'll both all be aware. The reasons given by the chairman, Alan McGugan, at Cronulla, this wasn't given to me personally, but the reasons given out by him is that with his test commitments, Rogers would not have been able to train with Cronulla, that Coach Provan wanted a full attendance at training in each game. Also, it would have upset the reserves and under-23s. So he didn't want it disrupted. He didn't have it disrupted. He's had the team that he wanted all the week. But Rogers is available, is fit, and is not selected for Cronulla.
Well, I think that's a real good decision on behalf of Eastern Suburbs.
So we've got the unbelievable situation of the world's best centre available, actually looking forward to a game of football today, I'm told, in a phone conversation that one of my people had with him. I know Norths will take him. I'll make an offer on behalf of Newtown, I'll have him. South Sydney would go for him. I think Manly will find a spot for him somewhere. Wonder what they want. Could we rent him for the day?
Well, if
Will you take him too?
Well, on this line then, Rex, on the line that Cronulla has taken, well, next week, if he plays for New South Wales, they play Western Suburbs next week, so I presume that, you know, they'll rest him again next week.
And after
the third test, they play South Sydney, so they'll probably rest him then too.
Well, I find it unbelievable.
That's the word I've got written down there.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I mean, the
There must be more than
under-23s and the reserve grade, I know they like to know who their sides are, but for any club to drop Rogers when he is available to play, to me, is just incomprehensible.
Did anything
That's a
happen
better word,
after the
incomprehensible.
After the last test?
Fullback
Yeah.
too.
Well,
which
there has to be
was,
a story
bit of
involved.
He was originally selected as fullback. All right, anyway, who's going to win the game? Cronulla and Eastern Suburbs. Cole Pearce.
Well, probably the possession of the ball, mate. Just turn the tide Cronulla's way with John McMartin, but they've got to be very particularly of the Eastern Suburbs pack. If they played as well as they did last week, they could surprise. But I'm
Mountie
going
or
for
Connors?
Cronulla. Mountie, isn't he?
Mountie is playing.
They're both in. They're both selected.
No, Mountie is there.
Mountie
Right,
is the
okay.
one.
Mountie's okay.
Cronulla, I think, might just sneak up today.
Peace.
You're going for Eastern Suburbs.
George,
You've
I'm
made-
glad to see there's some more sense in this round this
Well, he's a
table.
hooker.
That's
Gotta be
right.
so.
And a captain of Australia.
And a dog for eastern suburbs too, eh?
Yeah.
No, I'd go for Cronulla at home up there. I think they've got a big, tough pack. I think we've forgotten just how good this Cronulla side is.
I think they're due for a win. They must win too. At this stage
I
of the
reckon
title.
East's starting to fight.
I would like to get Norm
game.
and his selection committee into a psychiatrist room at the moment over this Rogers business. But there you go. So
Maybe
I
it's
go
a
for
hoax.
Cronulla.
Maybe
Newtown
Rogers
and
will
North
be in
at
the
Henson
side.
Park. This has got a bearing on the battle of the...
Well, Alan
wooden
wrapped last
spurt.
week. The Newtown.
Newtown.
You've got to go for Newtown.
Specials.
anyone going for North Sydney? Oh, there's loyalty.
You going over there today? I thought you might have been.
Breathes there a man with soul so dead, who never to himself has
They'll
said.
play, and they'll beat
Ned's flipped his wig.
Canterbury and Balmain. Cole Pearce.
Well, as a new referee there, Hartley's not refereeing. Danzy will be your referee today, of course.
And Graham Hughes is out of the Canterbury side.
Graham Hughes wasn't picked.
And David Grant's out of Balmain.
Is he?
And Miranda.
And George Papanis is playing for Canterbury.
George Papanis is available
Definitely playing.
if selected.
Well, if George Papanis is playing, I'm slightly tipping the scales their way, Canterbury.
Okay, Alan?
I'm slightly Canterbury's way, very, very slightly.
George, you don't need to make a comment, do
You
you?
have to ask me.
I'm very much Canterbury's way.
Oh, I know, but I think there's something between you.
No.
You'll have to stop meeting like this. People are getting suspicious.
I think
George is a
free
good
medical
judge.
bills, is he? Yeah.
No, I think Canterbury's playing very well. I think the loss of Miranda is going to be very keenly felt by Balmain, and the loss of Grant is going to be.
Yes.
Okay,
You're right.
Canterbury, in your opinion, Noel?
No, Balmain.
You're going for Balmain. All right, I go for Canterbury. You've got a few first-grade forwards out of the side at the moment, haven't you? Graham Hughes and Robinson and Coveney, and
They'll all be back next week.
we'll all be back next
I think
week.
they've got about 5 or 6
I go for
all-time
Canterbury.
forwards.
In the first round, in the game we televised today, Parramatta and St George, there was Hard and Grizzly. First, who's going
I think St George will win this and will win it very clearly and well. I think that they've hit their top hovels, they're going to get plenty of ball, and they're going to be far too strong for Parramatta, whose only chance is that Mick Cronin's got a big day on the boot.
And Noel Kelly.
I think that St George will beat Para purely and simply because I reckon their cogs out. I reckon little Graham Murray's a top player, and I think a lot of play revolves around him at Parramatta, and I reckon that they might get knocked off by St George.
I've got a slight hankering for Parramatta up there if they get sufficient possession. But I'm not going to sit on the fence. I will say Parramatta will win it against the St George side. So it's certainly going to be a very interesting one.
Yeah,
All right.
top game, this one.
Should be. Watch it tonight, 6:30 on Channel 7. You'll see the lot. Now, this is the try that was judged by the panel to be the next one to go into judging in the quarterfinals of the Try of the Year competition, and it's the one scored by, you'll see.
Rocket ready, trying to get a pass away. Still he does. He's a freak at that. Craig Young got himself into the clear, looking for support. Unloads nicely to Mortimer. Running well. He got it to Dorahy. Dorahy weaving, running, gets it back to Cronin. Cronin's up the sideline. The pass inside to Cronulla. Shut the gate. The horse has bolted.
Just wondering about who they could pick for a New South Wales side. Well, there it is, and we hope that you enjoy our telecast this evening. George, I'd like to give you some goodies for coming on the show. I'd like to give you a night out for two at the Cooperage Restaurant, 362 New Canterbury Road, Dulwich Hill.
He'll take it.
Jimmy Kylo, a Scotchman, will be happy to give you, a Greek-Australian, a very good meal of whatever choice you like. Claude Fay vouchers to the value of $20. Checkers' finest quality tonic soda, bitter lemon and dry ginger. A delicious ham from Mepro, the small goods specialist. Some Australian Ben Hogan leader golf balls. Skeffron, the pain relief spray. You might need a little bit after 2 games in 2 days. A Whale 3-minute car wash and hot wax. Available at Cremorne or Bondi Junction. And a 2-litre container of Mr. Juicy, beautiful orange juice. With our good wishes.
Thanks very much.
Ferris, did you?
You've got to be very careful not to catch a cold when you've had a Viking sauna.
We got a new picture for you, Ferris, and a new lady. Isn't she lovely? Viking Sauna, 352 Pittwater Road, Manly. And they'll give you all the details on your Viking Sauna. 939-6977. We'll take the break.
In our competition, and the cheque for $50 is Ray Chesterton.
Greg, you came to the fore with Canterbury this year after the side lost Noonan and Charlton to Newtown. Did you expect to get into first grade so quickly?
I was hoping so. Actually, I started off the beginning of the year in first grade. And suspension early in the pre-season set me back. So it's, and Canterbury won 6 or 7 on the trot. And it's taken me this long to get back into the team.
It was a remarkable suspension. It set some sort of record in rugby league. 1 minute, you and Craig Young, both off.
Not a record I'm sort of proud of, but it's just one of those things, I was very nervous that day and I was G'd up and I went on as a replacement. I was hoping to do well because I was hoping to secure a position in first grade. And it's just one of those things. We both wound up on the sidelines for a few weeks.
Well, your form recently has been perfect timing both on and off the field, because your contract's up at the end of this year. What's the future hold? Are you staying with Canterbury or perhaps moving?
I'd like to stay with Canterbury, and actually Peter Moore seen me a few weeks ago about a new contract, but I think I'll wait till the end of the year and decide then.
This, of course, is film of last week's game, Peter, when you were one of the stars. 31 tackles for a prop forward. That's an awful lot of work. Did you expect to do that much work?
Yeah, well, actually, it was Ted's game plan to send the Parramatta team into the forwards, the backs to move up quickly on the outside, and it's then up to Graham Hughes, myself and George to make the tackles, and if we never made the tackles, we'd have been in a lot of trouble.
Well, you certainly did, and you pulled that upset win. There was a lot of controversy about the result over refereeing decisions and such. I suppose you were happy, but
I was very happy. We actually bombed a few tries, you know, and I thought we deserved to win.
That win last week ended a bit of a slump for Canterbury. They haven't been going quite so well in past weeks. What's happened?
I've had a few injuries, Ray, and that's set us back. And most teams, you know, in the middle of the season end up in a sort of a slump, and we've come out of it, and I hope we win today.
What about today's game with Balmain? How do you see that going?
I think it'll be very close, but I think we'll win. I've heard George is playing, and he's a great influence on the team. He steadies the team down. He leads by example. It's a tremendous play, so I think we'll win.
The very best of luck for this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Ray.
Ray Chest Cook, the Canterbury player that's made a big impression last weekend. Rightio, now others. And for you, Peter Mortimer, a Fabiani shirt and a Spank T-shirt in club colours, modelled here by Johnny Peard. Okay, congratulations. Now, the Mick Simmons Award, and this is the one we enjoy very much giving on this program. The Mick Simmons Award is for the Rookie of the Year. At the end of the year, we nominate and judge who is the best rookie, but all the new players who are having their first season in Sydney first grade are available for this award, and it is, of course, with the compliments of Mick Simmons. Now, would Peter Peters like to talk to the nomination for Rookie of the Year in our round? This is Rod Heinecker of North Sydney.
Rod, your North Sydney haven't done a good... They came from behind at half-time to beat Parramatta. In this game, Paponis backing up after his test display yesterday when he led Australia to another win. He's up against Whittaker today from Balmain. Now, Neil Whittaker is virtually a rookie hooker, and he might have trouble today getting the ball for the Tigers. In reserve grade, of course, Noel Mabry standing by, and I wouldn't be surprised if the experienced Mabry, back from a broken arm and having a few games now under his belt, might be used by Ron Willey, who is a great admirer of the ability of Mabry. The forwards, it's going to be a rough, tough match, and it's going to be played up front. And Paponis, of course, has got two good props in Hughes and Cook, and he's going to make it awfully hard for Balmain. Canterbury never looked like winning this game that we've got a few highlights from now, until the second half, and they improved their football and came away with a good win after some poor recent form. A few weeks ago we were talking about Canterbury as being a likely grand finalist, and then they slumped, and they came out of it with a good win last week, but I can't see them holding out Balmain today. I think Balmain's all-round strength in the backs and a big, rough, tough pack of forwards will see them win this one.
I think, Peter, that you've been around me too much. You're starting to get the words stuck halfway out, like I do.
I think it's the Bourbons last night, I think.
Okay, won't go into that. Western Suburbs and South Sydney. This game to be played at Lidcombe Oval, and with some sensation.
Home, they're nevertheless keen to avenge their defeats in the first two tests by turning on a match-winning display. Late this afternoon, the English coach Eric...
In a day where referee Dennis Braybrook sent 3 players from the field at Belmore, Cronulla's Bill Annabelle ordered off at Redfern, Steve Hargey an early shower at Leichhardt, and Royce Ayliffe sent from the field at Jubilee, the New South Wales Rugby League executive is almost certain tonight to hold an inquiry into the weekend's violence. The Belmore fiasco involved Canterbury's Greg Cook being ordered off firstly, and then he was followed by West John Donnelly and John Dorahy. Following the game, several players made it very clear that they didn't agree with Braybrook. At least 3 West players hurled abuse at the referee as they filed through the tunnel to the dressing rooms. Another Magpie player, who has a close association with an evening newspaper, blamed the media for the debacle. West coach Roy Masters calmed the wild scenes after the game, ordering his players and officials to shut up and say nothing further. Of the players ordered off yesterday, 3, Donnelly, Cook and Ailiff, will be appearing for the second time before the judiciary. Ailiff, sent off at Cogra, claims he was bitten at least 3 times. But as the judiciary prepares to hear the cases involving the 6 players, club officials will wait with bated breath as the lengthy suspensions could shatter their semi-final ambitions. With 5.5 rounds still to be decided, here is the Premiership table with only 4 points separating 6 sides. St George, with 6 matches remaining, lead on 24. Then Parramatta and Canterbury, with 5 games to play, are on 22 in equal second. Balmain, with 6 to play, are on 4th at 21. Cronulla, with 6 to play, and West, with 5 to play, are equal 5th on 20. And then, of course, Manly, 3 points away in 7th spot, appear out of the race back on 17 points. Now, the big question is, which of the top 6 will miss the cut-off? So let's have a look at the remaining games for each of those 6 sides in this incredible 1979 Premiership. Firstly, St George seem assured of not only a spot in the 5, but as well, they appear to have a stranglehold on the minor Premiership, although in the next 3 weeks they play...
And his punching charge will now be heard tomorrow night. And then the West players left the club with their coach Roy Masters. They were really upset, and John Donnelly showed his displeasure by swearing and then spitting. The 6th player, Steve Hargie from Newtown, will also face the judiciary tomorrow night. Hargie was supposed to appear last night, but the referee from the Balmain Newtown match, Gary Cook, was indisposed and couldn't give evidence. League President Kevin Humphreys viewed the Donnelly incident in one of our news cruises today. He refused to comment, but has requested a tape of the incident to show to the league executive on Thursday night. It's Thursday night that the presidents and secretaries of the 12 clubs have been summoned to league headquarters to discuss the mounting violence in the game. At that meeting, plans will be announced for a new committee which will have the power to take action against any club whose players are found guilty of violent conduct. We tried to contact John Donnelly today to get his side of the story as far as the suspension and the violence goes, but we couldn't reach him. We'll try again tomorrow, and if you're watching, John, we'd really like to hear your side of the story. Back to you, Roger.
Thank you, Mike. And more news after this break.
A treatment for their star fullback, John Dorahy. At the judicial inquiry last night, Dorahy received a 4-match suspension. He'll be charged with using a forearm to the head of an opponent, while the big West prop John Donnelly was suspended for 5 games on a similar charge. Wests are understandably concerned. The loss of these 2 top players must seriously jeopardise their chances of making the semi-finals. In an exclusive interview today, Graham McNeice spoke to a concerned Magpies coach, Roy Masters.
Masters was unhappy over the replacement referee for Greg Hartley, who withdrew last Thursday morning through injury. Masters felt a far more experienced referee would handle the match, and the elevation of Dennis Braybrook from reserve came as something of a shock to the Magpies coach.
Yes, it did, Graham. It surprised me, particularly insofar as referee Braybrook was appointed to a Canterbury Western Suburbs reserve grade game, and our reserve grade team were running last in the competition. So, in fact, it was a reserve grade referee of fairly low standing in the eyes of the referees appointments board people, and so it certainly did surprise me, particularly when they knew on Thursday morning that Greg Hartley had withdrawn.
It's quite obvious that Western Suburbs have been singled out as, say, the ringleaders of the violence incurred in rugby league at the present time. Do you think that's justified?
No, I don't think it's justified. It takes 2 to tango. In most of the games that we've played this year, the 3 or 4 which have been written up in the media as being quite violent encounters, it hasn't been one-sided. And as a matter of fact, probably the tables are turning a little bit now. I see teams are going out deliberately to provoke us and get some of our fellows fired up, and probably a little bit of that happened on Sunday when, in the first instance, Canterbury had a player sent from the field, where our blokes at that stage in time got 2 of them got penalised at a later time and suspended, sent from the field. Whereas that's not a characteristic of our players, because they know that if you're playing with 13 men and the opposition have got 12, the points are in your favour. We seem to have an image of being a team which is thugs and violent and all the rest of it, whereas we do play some very good games of football where we move the ball about, and probably the classic case of that was our encounters against both Balmain and Parramatta. Very few cautions handed out during the course of the game. Played in good spirit and some very good tries scored.
Now, you won 6 matches on the trot. You've lost your last 4. Wests are now in trouble. What about the final 5?
Well, discounting perhaps Manly's chances of making the 5, we're the only team which can put any pressure on the remaining 5 teams in the competition, which we intend to do. We have to win 4 of our next 5 games. We're down on one knee, but we're not down on both. I think we'll make it.
All right, let's get on to a brighter note now. No other Australian league team has had more reason to celebrate than our current team of champions. Last night they were guests of the Balmain Leagues Club, where Nut and Muddle turned on a sumptuous victory dinner, and celebrate is just what they did.
There were smiles aplenty as the league stars and their ladies wined and dined last night, and it was a fitting conclusion to the most successful campaign ever conducted by an Australian side. Their record-breaking performances this season have covered them in glory, and they've proved worthy champions indeed. When Ray Warren spoke to the Australian captain George Paponis, the skipper summed up the feelings of the side in just one word.
Elated. It's been a good series, I think. On behalf of the Australian team, we've set records that we probably didn't anticipate to set at the beginning. You know, we just went out there to win the Ashes originally, and the rest came with it.
Well, you've done 3 things. You've won the series 3-0. That's the first ever. Michael Cronin's individual record achievement, and of course the highest point-scoring Australian side in test matches against England. Of those 3 records, which one do you see as the most important? The 3-0 series?
I think the 3-0 series, because no one's done that, or no Australian side's done that before, so no one can ever break that record. I think the point-scoring record, although I doubt whether it can be broken, may be broken, whereas the 3-0 will stand forever.
Ray Warren then presented the Australian captain with a memento of the series, a videotape of the highlights of the 3 test matches, a gesture of appreciation to the league and the players for their cooperation with the media this season.
And for your performances on the field. And with that, congratulations and thank you.
Thanks very much, Ray. It's been a pleasure to be associated with Channel 10 too. I think you've done a superb job, and once again, thanks very much for this video.
Ray's presentation was one of 2 made that night. The second was the prestigious Harry Sutherland Medal, awarded to the man of the series. This year, the recipient, a delighted and well-deserving Ray Price.
And our congratulations to Ray Price, thoroughly deserved. After that earlier talk of mayhem and violence, by way of contrast, you might like to see our league stars in a night of variety and comedy. It's this Thursday at 7:30, and how can I describe it? The inimitable Rugby League New Faces. In fact, you'd really have to see it to believe it. This Thursday, 7:30, Rugby League New Faces. 1979.
Well, it's sponsored by Tooths.
But it was not.
If you had to look to someone, well, surely the kudos for 1979 must largely go to the captain of the Australian team, our footballing doctor, Dr. George Paponis. If anyone is ever a great advertisement for rugby league, then this man from Canterbury Bankstown has to be it. This special report we file for the World of Sport on Dr. George Paponis.
Captain and first Canterbury player ever to captain the Australian team, our own George Paponis. Reserves are Brown and McMahon.
Did that wake up in the middle of the night short of breath?
Wake up, but I'm not short of breath.
Right, okay.
This is the moment I will cherish forever. The words of Australian Rugby League hooker and captain George Paponis after his team had just created history by defeating Great Britain in the Ashes series 3-0. Dr. George Paponis is an achiever. He's not a natural footballer and has worked hard at his game. At the same time, he worked 6 long, hard years studying to become a doctor. Mixing professional football with all his demands, plus his studies, and being successful at both, is a pretty good indication of George Paponis's drive. When George captained Australia this year, it was a lifelong ambition fulfilled, and to this day, George believes that playing for Australia is something that club football can't buy.
Obviously, I want to captain Australia. I think, you know, it's very important to me, but also captaining and playing for my club, because I owe the club a lot over the years, and I want to try and get myself back 100% fit so that I can give them money, give them value for their money.
Dr. George Paponis, or George Peepin' Eyes as he's affectionately known, joined Canterbury Bankstown in 1972. Now, 90 first-grade games later, he's at the top of the tree. Captain of Australia, captain of Canterbury, a successful doctor and businessman. It would be logical to think Dr. George might find it hard to find his level with his footballing colleagues.
I don't think it makes it difficult. I think you'd be surprised the education that a lot of footballers have these days.
But do you have very much in common, really?
I think so. Well, I've grown up with those people, and obviously it's a little bit different from the people I mix with at the hospital and that, or where I'd work. But no, I find a lot in common with them. I've grown up in that environment, so I'm used to it.
Being a doctor playing a tough body contact sport does has its contradictions. Still, George copes pretty well. However, there are times when the doctor takes over the footballer on the field.
I was a bit distressed last weekend when a player was knocked unconscious, and I saw his eyes roll up and he was gurgling. And I sort of raced over then and told him to leave him alone. He was lying on his side, which he was at the time anyway. And then by that time, their trainer had come on.
So you were thinking as a doctor at that time?
At that particular moment, yeah.
More than a player?
I think so, because they were attacking at the time, but he looked serious at the time, so I was naturally concerned as a medical man. But you know, once his trainer and doctor had come on, then I tuned right off and went back to thinking football.
If you could stamp out any practice in football, any type of injury, what would it be?
I think the worst is where players come in occasionally. It doesn't happen very often, luckily, with knees late in the tackle and into the back of an opposition player, and that's the most frightening thing to me, the consequences that can bring.
George won't deny that football is good for business. Still, it can have an effect at his 5-doc surgery.
It's a bit awkward when you limp into your own surgery and you limp up to examine a patient or something, or
and you're carrying a broken arm,
or a black eye or something. It's a bit embarrassing for your patients.
On the question on how much money he earns from football, George, like a good politician, was delightfully evasive. However, he did reveal some startling facts.
I'll just tell you what the average footballer earns, and I think it's graded down as to whether you're an international player or not. I think the average first grader would be on about $15,000 a year.
But you're not
the average international, and the average first grader would probably be on about $10,000 a year.
But you're not an average first grader.
Well, an average international player would probably be on about $15,000 a year, between about 13 and 15.
Dr. George Paponis has really made it. But not one to be carried away with the success that has come his way, George knows exactly where his future is, and it's not in football.
That's a year-to-year proposition for me at the moment. I'll decide at the end of the year. I'll probably play another year.
So you're 25 now.
Right.
Would you see yourself playing football for another 5 years?
No, definitely not.
Whenever Dr. George decides to hang up his boots, it will close a chapter on a remarkable career. The little Greek boy who made it in the toughest sporting code in the world.
And that's the way it is. Dr. George Paponis, a real credit to rugby league. And Dr. George, with the compliments of another fellow who was a great credit to rugby league in his playing days, Kevin Junee. Kevin Junee's Sports Stores is quite happy to make available to us some Brooks training shoes for the Sydney to surf. And I noticed, Dr. George, you had those in your shop too. So, and also a beautiful training tracksuit. So with the compliments of Kevin Junee, for you, Dr. George, congratulations on being such a credit to the game that you grace. Now, our Name the Try Scorer competition has been suspended because we got all of 4 letters last week, and we do know that there's more people than that out there. Up goes to Sorodimi. It looks forward, but as they say in the business, the points are on the board, and St George can smile. And finally, another match that was decided by a referee's decision. Gary Cook said that this pass in the 15th minute of Canterbury and Cronulla was not forward. Paul Kahn slips the ball around a tackler, and Neen races in for a try that was to be the winning margin. Here it is again. Neen is nowhere in the picture yet. The ball has left Kahn's hands. He runs onto the ball now. And once again, the final score, Cronulla 14, Canterbury 12. And the ball game. Now, I'm not trying to crucify referees. They certainly can and do make honest mistakes, don't we all? But what I am saying is that in a finely balanced grand final, decisions like the ones I've showed you will certainly mean the difference between winning and losing. The man who made famous that phrase...
And Mitch Brennan dropped one right. Well, the wind probably played a big part in your game as it did with this game. Was the wind as strong? I mean, it was a 35, 40 mile an hour gale.
I wouldn't use that as an excuse. I think that's
you're just looking for excuses. So I think they just...
Well, I think it makes it...
I said, but it does affect the passing, Harry.
Of course it does.
It's a strange thing, you know, West won 4 games last year at the end of the year with field goals.
Yeah.
You know, all 1 point.
Yeah.
And the wheels too. And they've lost 2 this year in succession.
You reckon?
Yeah, well, this game, Kahn and Steve Rogers had top performances, particularly Rogers in defence. Kahn's ball work was very, very good. Paponis erred, I thought, in the early part of the game when not insisting that Gearin kick for goal. Because Rogers later, from exactly the same spot, was able to get the kick over that won the game. So it was a bit of a bag for George Paponis and that. I know I've laboured the point, I've already mentioned it on a couple of occasions, but I think that the captains that make wrong decisions have got to stand by the decisions. And I think if you've got a man that's the second leading point scorer in the rugby league and he's 47 metres out from the opponent's goal line early in the game, with no points on the board at the time, and he's got a gale force wind behind him, he's entitled to be told to have a shot for goal. And Rogers, from almost within 6 inches of that spot, kicked the winning goal, and Rogers is not going to be considered as good a goal kicker as Gearin.
No.
And I think it was a bad blunder. Not as consistent, certainly. Gearin's got a very good striking rate.
Talking to Peter Moore during the week, Rex, and he said that if Rogers had to play, they would have won very convincingly because he just wrapped up about four or five try-scoring chances. He just stopped that.
He's defending very well.
Oh, he's a great defender. He's great.
Well, Canterbury had first use of the win. They led 8-2, then 12-2 in the second half. There was an area of doubt about the pass from, in my view, from Mullane to Cameron for the try, but the referee was in good position and didn't have any doubt about it.
What about around the back one? That around the back one?
I didn't, well, they're difficult to tell from side on, you know, unless you're directly in line with it, aren't they, Alan?
Yeah.
But I think it was a damn good game of football in the conditions. Mark Hughes, McMartin, Mick Mullane, all good games.
What a good goal this was too, Rex.
Yes, this is a good one. Look at the wind allowed.
Great goal.
That's like one of your drives off the tee that you won 2 tournaments this week. Tell them who your partner was, Ferris.
Rex Mossop.
Right. Wednesday, he's had 40 points individual at Manly in the Stableford, and he's won the insurance day the next day. 41, he does work occasionally. 41. He wouldn't work in an iron lung, they tell me. Now, I want you to see this, because that's the one that hits the upright, and you'll see a touch judge's flag go up, and the ball stayed out. We'll have a look at it again on the disc. Yeah. Didn't strike it well, but I would hope that a touch judge is not going to be in a situation where he's going to make errors when that's his only job. Well, that's the one a lot of people said was forward, but, you know, I'm not going to sit in a commentary position when they're that far away from me and say they are. The video disc didn't show.
Yeah, that's right.
Look on the scoreboard. He is a good player. I don't know whether he's is he a good footballer. I don't know about his timing for appointments. Lets him down a little bit. Here's a freakish little incident that could have had very dire repercussions. We'll see that again in a minute. It was quite spectacular.
It was a great save too,
wasn't it?
Could have been.
Oh, Mullane had a top game, and he took that bomb late in the game.
A great take under great pressure. He had a fine game, Mick Mullane.
Isn't it strange how these two sides are so evenly matched that there's been 2 games just decided by maybe 1-2 points at a time?
They play the same brand of football, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, I think Cronulla's got the wood on St George a bit in the premiership, haven't they?
The last couple of years.
Touch in the first half.
Get it off, eh?
Today we can break that.
Now, that was the winning goal from the same spot. I know I'm labouring the point, the same spot that Gearin wasn't asked to kick for goal. Now, this is the one that I want you to have a look at. These are the ones that worry me when a man can make an error like this. A touch judge, the kick at goal. Watch the 2 touch judges as we freeze it. 1 flag down, 1 flag up. Now, you know, that's the only function the men of... Cole Pearce, answer me. Am I being unreasonable?
Not unreasonable there. I think the touch judge on the far side, he should have moved across and got his own position, but he didn't move across. He stood on the same spot. I think there's criticism of the touch judge not moving across and see where...
I mean, it doesn't help the referee there, does it?
Well, he's got to be the arbiter then himself, then a 1 up and 1 down. He's got to give it from about, 40 or 50 metres away.
Yeah, right.
That wouldn't have been hard to do, knock that one back.
No, it was not. No, but I think if you got criticism of the touch judge, well, he should have moved across.
Well,
and,
he's only,
got
7 yards from the incident. You wouldn't think a man could make an error like that.
I think,
well, it's easy.
Yeah.
See, the referees had Greg Hartley in on, when was it, Wednesday night, to give him a kick in the tail for not getting permission to go on television. I think they've got more things to worry about when you see things like that. than getting Hartley in because he made one comment on television without getting permission.
Well, I think there is a rule in the Referees Association, Alan. I think it's a matter of courtesy. If you belong to a golf club or something, there's a constitution that you've got to live by. I hope you do. So I think that. And
I think rules are rules, Alan.
Yeah, the man was asked on the day, and they said, yeah, we come on, just keep statistics. And then he was asked for one comment. Now, if he just had kept statistics, okay, but you're liable to do it if you've got someone there asked for a comment and the fella's given a comment and got a kick in the tail.
Position. Like, the players are the same, coaches are the same, everybody's the same with the rugby league. You've got to get permission to go on television to make
I do think, though, that the Referees Association have got more things to worry about than giving Greg Hartley a kick in the tail. And I've no bag for Hartley.
You're the protector.
No, I'm not the protector, but, when you see things like that going on for us, and there were 15 points decided by what could have been wrong decisions last week in one game.
Well, just get back to your point, Alan. He was asked at the Sydney Cricket Ground, wasn't he? And he could have asked any member of the executive or the referees. Any single member could have got it, and they were there with him.
Well, I think Greg's in error. Let's face it, there are rules, Alan. Yeah. I'm not, you argue with me if you want to. No. But I think there are rules, and he didn't abide by the rules, and he's getting a rap over the knuckles.
Well, he's a man that lives by the rules. Why doesn't he live by them?
All right, let's go on to that spectacular dive by Mick Mullane in that game last week. God, if ever a man, I shouldn't use the Lord's name, I know, but if ever a man went so close to breaking his neck, have a look at this. His head was jammed. There's nothing illegal about it. Mortimer had nothing to do with it except he kicked the ball, but I don't know how he didn't break his neck.
Deserved a purple
Watch it there, look at that, look. He got up very gingerly after that. He had a very gutsy game. That's why he won our Pye Award, one of the reasons.
Tremendous.
OK, let's go quickly on to the Manly-Balmain game. Alan Clarkson, a couple of questions for the boy. Specifically, I would like to ask you, can we assume that John Gibbs is back? Is it when he happy returns?
Yes,
I'd like to...
They seem to have that little bit of extra class about them that they look more dangerous to me in attack than
Alan,
South
statistically, Canterbury score more tries of the year than any other team in Sydney. If that had been on Channel 7's Big League, that try, that would have won this year's award, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it can't because it wasn't on our show. But which doesn't denigrate it at all. I'm only suggesting we can only give awards to things that appear on our
They're a very watchable team, I think. They're, Canterbury, they've got the ability now to be able to score tries from any position on the field, but you've got a fellow like Mortimer sneaking around there and
who I thought might have been a bit quiet yesterday, Al.
Yeah, he did. He made the run that I thought put them in the position to be able to score that first try when the South's halfback was hurt, and he saw that they won this and no lock forward there, so he just went zap.
Well, Coach Gossip has got Canterbury playing attractive football, and they've figured in some cliff-hanging games because they will play an open-style football.
That's right.
This is the winning try.
He got a serve too. Anyway, Anderson's got the try, and that's the main thing. But I wrote it down this way, that I thought the Canterbury were just too quick, too clever and too fast.
Yeah.
And that was the difference. But if I had been able to kick goals, or somebody had been able to kick goals, it would have been a lot closer. And Cole, you mentioned that try that they bombed. That was the lay-down Mazir five-pointer, wasn't it?
Of course, on the other hand, I suppose you could say...
I was just going to say that.
Canterbury missed a couple too.
South, to me, have been all season, they seem to be giving away a little bit of size, a bit of speed, and that. And you got chaps when they bring Topper on as a hooker, and they're small, and then you look at the other players, and you look at the centres, and they're a little bit on the small side, and they don't take much out of the side.
One pass, two, three.
Should have been stopped there.
Four.
That should have been stopped.
Five.
It should have been stopped there.
Six.
Stopped there. Because that'd have been bigger players that have stopped them.
7, dummy. 8.
Actually, they're really at this stage not
9,
no.
10. You wish you could score them. 11, 12.
Again.
13.
If I was coaching a side and let 13 passes
14
go
players.
like that, I'd have certainly something to say.
14 players. No, I didn't take the dummy, mate. There's 14 players, including the dummy half.
I like George Paponis' comment after the game that it was a planned move.
Yes.
And the only thing that went wrong was that he was supposed to score.
I think George could get a writer's job for Bob Hope after that remark. OK, so let's carry on then, and we'll go to Barry Ross at the moment and just see exactly what he's got in the way of ins and outs from today's round of football. Barry.
Well, firstly, with Channel 7's Big League Rex, Cronulla, Steve Rogers will play. He's overcome the flu and will definitely play. St George as is. Manly and East at Brookvale Oval, both teams okay, as per program. Balmain and Penrith.
With the way we played, we knew we were up against a side that was never going to stop tackling. I was delighted with our defence, particularly in the first half, but our game plan was to spread that ball, quick movement of the ball, and back up, and the tries that we scored in that first half I was very happy with, yes.
What about the hot and cold form, Ted, of Canterbury? You know, week in, week out, they're not the same team, are they? Can we expect to see them going a bit more smoothly from now on?
Well, I couldn't agree with you about hot and cold form. We were beaten last week by Cronulla, very close game by one of the leading teams, and prior to that, with the exception of Eastern Suburbs, we've beaten Parramatta, we've beaten Western Suburbs, and I'm quite happy if we maintain the form that we put on the paddock first half today and first half against Cronulla last week. If I can marry those two halves, I'll be delighted.
Do you think that a team has to finish in the top three to win this competition?
No, I don't. I think once you make the five, well, then it's a completely different competition. It is an advantage to be in the top three, and if we can get into that top three, we'll be very, very happy about it. But the way the competition's been this year, Peter, I think any side that makes the five is a contender for the championship this year.
There it is, any side that makes the five, once they're there, no great advantage being in the top three. Now let's have a listen to Peter Falingos.
Like the kiddies here at the Royal Alexandra Hospital for Children with illnesses like cancer and leukemia. These youngsters from all over our state never know how long they must stay. It is for children like Vanessa that McDonald's family restaurants are helping create the Ronald McDonald House, a home away from home for families with children undergoing treatment at the hospital. Soon, a known charity may offer you a McDonald's Cares voucher, which will help build the Ronald McDonald House. It costs $1, but McDonald's give you the $1 back in food value when you present the voucher at any McDonald's restaurant. And get this All-Star League poster, just 25 cents, only at McDonald's.
The New South Wales Rugby League support the Ronald McDonald House. Please help us help the children.
Thank you. In the Newtown performance from the week before when they caned Cronulla down at Henson Park. Honestly, with the inclusion of Bill Noonan back in the Newtown side, I felt confident that with the Jets could knock
Get out of the
Canterbury over.
It's my turn.
That didn't hurt a bit either. But honestly, they only played for 20 minutes. There was a tremendous breeze there, and for 20 minutes it looked like Newtown were going to give Canterbury a pack of real trouble. But they knocked off playing. And at the half break there, how about that one? The Jets, they were trailing by about 12 points at half-time, but the breeze was that strong that they could have even recovered from that. But then this little bloke come on the field replacing Mal Creevy, replacing Mortimer, and in 14 minutes he scored 3 of the best individual tries you ever saw in your life.
You want to see his last one?
And I reckon Steve Mortimer must have felt like saying, pull this bloke off and let me back in. In fact, one bloke said, Steve Mortimer who?
Steve who?
This was a real performance, and but some great displays. Gary Hughes, who has been under some criticism lately, he really cut cut him the ribbons.
Isn't that awful? I mean, great work by Creevy, but the defence was abysmal, wasn't it?
Well, this got worse after this.
Oh, yes.
The Newtown defence was pretty good. This is a pretty good defence right now.
I'm all right today, mate. You should have seen me yesterday.
Hughes had a great game. He stepped. Of course, he was aided and abetted by some inept tackling. But and Gearan put in the top performance: 2 tries and 7 goals for a personal tally of 20 points, breaking the Canterbury record, the point scoring record for all time. Yeah, and I think for a season there's more points to him yet if Canterbury make the 5. But whilst they look good, I think that the injuries have hit them so badly that they're going to have trouble if they lose any more players who've been able to put in.
Look at that.
It's pretty ordinary stuff, isn't it, in the way of defence?
We couldn't make half a yard through there last week.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
This is the outstanding thing, Greg, was the fact that against Cronulla last week, your forwards continually hammered that centre and couldn't even make a yard. And yet people are strolling through there like on a Sunday afternoon picnic. Greg, I saw them play Souths, and they did exactly the same to Souths as they did to you fellas.
Yeah,
you know?
they played very well against us, and they said the guys had fire in their eyes, their forwards,
Yeah.
looking for us, take us out of the game.
Well, how do teams do it one week and not the next?
I don't know.
But you fellas were pretty flat there that same day, though.
Oh, still, they took the initiative away from us. They control the game.
Play
That's
as
the
well
most
as you're
important
allowed.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the inconsistency of even good sides, supposed good sides these days, must be an absolute nightmare for coaches. How do you know that your side's going to even play reasonably well the week after?
Well, this is the point. And then, Rex, that's the very point we're getting at. Like, Newdown against Cronulla looked like a world-beating side, and yet there was no resemblance against Canterbury to their same side, and they got Bill Noonan back, who must strengthen them. In fact, I reckon
will be unlucky should they miss the semi-finals. We'll be hoping for a change of luck this weekend. Beaten in close games against Parramatta and Cronulla, Balmain are looking for assistance from Norths and Manly to keep their semi-final hopes alive.
Ideally what they're after is to win over Souths, Norths to defeat Wests and Manly to win against Canterbury. This would then place Balmain on 27 points, with Canterbury and Wests both remaining on 26 points. However, Canterbury captain George Paponis has other ideas, even though he's expecting a tough one from Manly.
I think Manly have really been rubbish lately in the media, and they'll probably be going out there flat out to redeem themselves in the last game.
You think Balmain would be a little unlucky if they didn't get in?
Oh, possibly, but that's the name of the game throughout the season. You know, a few games don't go your way, the luck's not in your favour. But, you know, if they'd played well enough, and they did on occasions, but, you know, they haven't made it. That's their problem.
Manly plagued with injuries and John Gray suspended. It would seem a tall order
of the night is the naming of the best-dressed personality, and this year it went appropriately to Cronulla centre, come fullback, come lock forward, Steve Rogers. But the serious part of the night saw Ray Price win the medal by a clear 6-point margin from St George half Steve Morris, with Kurt Sorensen third. The annual dinner was attended by many dignitaries, headed by the Premier, Mr Rann, who made the presentation to the Parramatta captain before a crowded auditorium.
To you, Ray, it's a culmination of what's been an outstanding career in both rugby and rugby league. It's not very many people who represent their country in two codes, and it's very few men who've had the great honour that's been bestowed on you tonight. Congratulations.
A very proud Ray Price, who earlier in the year won the Sunderland medal for being the best player in the Australia-Great Britain series.
Well, Ray Price, it's been 4 years for Parramatta. It seems almost that you're on side with the referees.
It's taken 4 years, Ray. I've enjoyed every one of them.
Ray, tell me, it must be one of the greatest thrills of your life?
It is, yeah. It's the greatest thrill I've had so far in league since I've changed over. I think there's one thrill that I'd really like to have, and until I can compare this with that, I'll keep it quiet. We've just got to win.
Everybody was saying that you would win the Rothmans medal before you came here tonight. How did you feel?
Very nervous, and maybe a little worried. If I didn't win it, you know, what could I think? But to a degree, I didn't take a great deal of notice in what people had said. I lived my own life, and I had a talk with my wife, and I suppose deep down I would have been very depressed if I hadn't have won it, but I would have accepted it because, well, I know my job is completely different to what people think it is.
The final clash against Western Suburbs on Sunday. Robert Hurst was at the Canterbury Bankstown Leagues Club to talk to coach Ted Glossop before the meeting opened.
Well, Canterbury have had a very bad run with injuries this season, losing many of their key players for many of the vital matches. And unfortunately for them, this weekend is no exception. In the sudden death final against Western Suburbs, they lose many of their key players. Mark Hughes, Jeff Robinson and John Coveney are all out, and there's a very big question mark over the fitness of Gary Hughes. Ted Glossop, how fit is Gary Hughes? What are the chances of him playing?
Well, Gary is in the side at this stage. We'll be training tonight and again on Saturday, and I'm prepared to leave Gary Hughes' fitness until the very last moment. He's a key player for us.
How important, in fact, is it that he does play for your chances?
Well, we can improvise. We've brought players in throughout the season, but Gary Hughes for the Canterbury backline is a must if we're going to put our organised game together. But if Gary is not 100% fit, there's no way he'll be taking the field, and Chris Mortimer will take his place. And if Chris is in the side, I'm quite confident we can beat Western Suburbs on Sunday.
Why are you so confident?
Well, we've played West twice this year, and although I'm a great believer in what happened in the past has no bearing on the future, we handled Western Suburbs' power in the forwards. They rely a lot on force in their forwards, but they do have backs to move the ball when the opportunity arises, and on each occasion we've held them in the forwards and we've finished on top of them in the backs.
And obviously on Sunday you'll be hoping to do exactly the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we're told that
and didn't do Western Suburbs chances any good at all, and we weren't overconfident, but we knew what we had to do, and our main game was go out there and do that.
You're certainly heavily outweighed in the forwards. What actually were Glossop's instructions to you?
Well, Ted said to us, we were going to play the game in 10-minute spells, and our main aim was to go out there in the first 10 minutes, get our defence in order, and from that, we were hoping that the rest of the game would follow on. We'd maybe get breaks later, but the defence was the main thing.
Yeah, well, you certainly followed his instructions, didn't you? You toppled the tackle count.
Yeah, well, that's a team effort, so that's all that counts.
You're rather diminutive for a lock forward. Is that your favourite position?
Well, I played most of my juniors at 5'8", but since coming to grade, I've played a fair bit of football at lock, and lately in the second row, but I think I'd prefer lock at the moment.
And while Canterbury left the SCG in high spirits, Wests bowed out of the competition rather ingloriously. A disappointing end.
There's a lot of pressure on these fellows, and probably their performances have suffered as a result. Certainly, with the case of Les Boyd, I know that he's also had a few bad injuries during the year, and I'm sure he'll be very, very glad to have a rest, and next year I think he'll be a lot better and brighter player for it.
I hope so. John Bailey and Graham McNeice have gone into mourning this week. In a world of
points, Parramatta were, I thought, superbly professional in trouncing Cronulla 24-4. However, I don't believe Cronulla can play so badly or as senselessly again. Fortunately for them, they do get a reprieve and the chance to beat Canterbury next Sunday. Their big problem at present is the fact that their prop forward Paul Kahn faces the judiciary tonight on a charge of foul play and also a deliberate kick to the face of an opponent and an abusive language to the referee. Now, here's the incident. Now, having played the odd game of prop forward myself over the years and been involved in thousands of scrums, I feel I'm qualified to offer an opinion that halfback Murray, who was to feed the scrum, balked at the time, dummied if you like. He was also pretty close to a scrum which was screwing around a fair bit. I believe there was no malicious intent by Kahn to kick the little half. Let me tell you, it's an occupational hazard for halfbacks feeding scrums. In an earlier match this year, we had on Sevens Big League, incidentally, Balmain halfback Greg Oliphant, as you'll see, received this kick to the head, which required several stitches. But it was done by his own prop forward, Jeff Naylor. And it was rightly treated as it should have been, as an accident. Now, I do hope that the judiciary take a good long look at this videotape evidence and exonerate Kahn. A man would really have to be a complete and utter blockhead to intentionally kick an opponent with a referee standing within 2 feet. Now, Graham Murray, when I spoke to him just a little while ago, said he was not injured or marked in any way, but he couldn't offer an opinion on whether it was intentional or not because he was concentrating, quite rightly, on his job of feeding the scrums. Well, Canterbury are currently 12-1 to win the competition. I believe this a little bit unrealistic. Their demolition of the much-vaunted Westpac yesterday was complete and surgical. West big forwards were run completely to a frazzle by the end of the game, and it was very apparent to me that big John Donnelly shouldn't have been on the field. He lacked match fitness and, well, he shouldn't have been anywhere near the paddock. Anyway, to criticise Western Suburbs is not to give credit where credit is due. Canterbury played marvellously well for their coach Teddy Glossop. They did exactly as was expected of them and produced a major upset. And who's to say that they won't keep doing it? Now, I ran out of superlatives when calling this gear and try yesterday. The incredible reflexes and coordination this youngster displays to do these things, to take Mortimer's pass on the half volley at full pace and dive over at the same time, were great rugby league and rugby league at its best. Enjoy it again.
Papona's special coming up. Is there a long flaming pass? Half volley!
Well, don't forget our Saturday on 7 Big League, Parramatta and Saints from 6 to 7:30 p.m, a full match telecast, and then on Sunday at our normal time slot, Cronulla and Canterbury Bankstown.
The fact that we then kept on top of Western Suburbs till the final hooter.
Can a small pack of forwards win a Sydney Grand Final?
Well, we're not looking at the Grand Final. We're looking at next Sunday's game against Cronulla, and again it's going to be a particularly hard game. A different team to Western Suburbs, a team that plans their attack because they count on possession from the scrums. The pack of forwards playing yesterday did their job, and I know that the pack of forwards playing Cronulla the following Sunday, they'll go out there with the same confident feeling they can handle the situation.
Well, 9 of the top men's seeds and most of the
Middle today on what changes, if any,
in tennis championships.
Now come into the 5/8 position with Chris Mortimer going to centre to partner his brother Peter. In the meantime, the Dragons of St George have firmed to 5-4 on to take out the title. Just back on Parramatta for a moment, today they have re-signed former international and Parramatta forward Bob O'Reilly to a contract. Ray Warren for Eyewitness Sport.
Thank you, Ray.
Been a 7-point try. But for Canterbury's fans, Hartley's ruling after 18 minutes that this pass from Graham Hughes to Steve Gearin was forward, and therefore it was not a try, was the hardest to swallow. Ken Sutcliffe today asked the star of the match, Steve Mortimer, what he thought of the ruling.
Yes, I'm very sure that it was a try, or the fact that Graham Hughes' pass to Stevie Gearin was not forward. I'm sure of that, but that's just part of the game, and the referee ruled it forward, so you can't do anything about it.
Is there a chance that the young players might get carried away with the success over the last couple of weeks?
No, there's no chance whatsoever. They're good boys. The forwards, they're a great bunch of blokes. They're realistic. Our coach is realistic. He talks to us. There's no big heads in the side. There's not one bloke that get carried away with any of the publicity. We're just going to turn a blind eye to it and go out and play Parramatta and try to beat them next Saturday.
Well, as I've been saying for the last 3 months, and as it has been for the last 3 years, refereeing decisions, as much as playing ability, will decide this year's premiership. The under-23s final, with Greg Hartley in firsts and Jack Danzy handling the reserves. Although Cook would not make any comment, it appears his resignation was brought about by dissatisfaction with the appointments board's ratings. Cook made a glaring error when he missed this offside play in the St George Parramatta match last weekend. It allowed St George to score a try that put the match beyond doubt. But Cook's career as a controversial referee really began with the 1976 grand final between Manly and Parramatta, a match that Manly won, although they scored only 1 try to Parramatta's 2. The rift between Cook and Parramatta was widened the following season when the St George Parramatta replay grand final was won by St George after a torrid match in which one Saint star was cautioned 5 times without being sent off. Cook's retirement leaves league dangerously short of first-grade referees. Kevin Roberts is out injured, and only Greg Hartley can now handle a major fixture. And by the way, the only change in Parramatta...
Why will your side win? And here to answer that, George Paponis and Ray Price.
Oh, I think we've got a lot of confidence now after our last 2 games. I think we've got a lot of youth in our side, and the style of game we play hopefully will upset Parramatta. We tend to spin the ball quite wide, which they don't do. And I think we've got the forwards to match Parramatta, and we've got a better back line. That's probably where we'll win it.
Well, I think we'll win this week. We blew our chance last week against St George. We could have beaten them. I thought they were the better team. They deserved to win, so I won't quibble about that. But I want a grand final, and so do the other 12 guys, and we're desperate for it, and we'll do whatever we can to win this game this week.
Fairly predictable answers from the 2 captains. The second question asked by Graham and myself was the other rather obvious one. If your opponents have a weakness, where does it lie? Here again, George Paponis and Ray Price.
Well, I'd be stupid if I did see or know of any to sort of mention them now. But I don't think there are too many weaknesses in the side. They're a very solid side all round, a very safe side, and you've just got to really make the most of your chances when you get them, because they don't make too many mistakes.
Oh, I wouldn't say they'd have a weakness. They've been playing very well of late the last couple of weeks. Stevie Mortimer has been really getting them going. I really wouldn't say they had a weakness. I think if we've got to stop anyone, we've got to stop Stevie Mortimer.
Just after that interview with Ray Price was recorded, Ron Hilditch, the Parramatta prop, went home with a bout of influenza. I spoke to him today and he's quite okay. Both camps have had their worries, though, during the week, with Canterbury losing Greg Brentnell, causing a reshuffle of their backline.
Yeah, Greg's been playing great football during the last two semi-final games, and his defence especially has been shattering, and it's a shame to lose him with his broken arm. But it's nice to see Gary Hughes back too. He's a good player and a very good ball handler and organiser. And Chris Mortimer, who's been substituting, has gone well, so hopefully it'll complement itself.
At Parramatta, their biggest worry out of last weekend's loss to St George was the loss of the scrums 14-7. The question is, in the space of 1 week, have they been able to sort out their biggest problem?
Well, Blue Jay is fit, he's in the team, so I think our pack will be all right. We went into last week's, I'd say, overconfident because of what we beat Cronulla. Well, we didn't beat it, but we only got beaten by 1 scrum. We scrummed very well, and I'd say a few of the guys are pretty cocky. Well, this week we've been brought back to earth, so we've got to get back and do it good again.
Do you reckon Peter Sterling will fit in?
I think he'll fit in. He was going good at the beginning of the year. He was probably playing a little above himself, trying to do a little bit too much. Well, he's a lot more experienced now, and I think he'll fit in very well.
Well, there it is. Now let's try and pick the winner. Honestly, to me, Parramatta will see more ball tomorrow, and that's not because Ray Price said so, but simply because Canterbury have not been dominating the scrums as they would like. And so, with an even share of possession and a quicker 5/8 in Peter Sterling, who I think will fit into the Parramatta side better than John Peard did, I'm forecasting a win for Parramatta and a grand final, therefore, between the Eels and the Dragons. But make no mistake, if Canterbury win the scrums easily and are allowed to play their natural game, they not only will win, but they'll win convincingly. Ray Warren for Eyewitness Sport.
And thank you, Ray. Well, as
the specialists.
A win in tomorrow's preliminary final against Canterbury. Here are the two teams. Parramatta, Bob Jay is in after doubts about him being fit. Wynne joins Jeff Gerard in the second row, and rookie Peter Sterling replaces the veteran Johnny Peard at 5/8. Canterbury, the most important change in this lineup is that Gary Hughes is back after 3 weeks. He's back in the 5/8 spot. Now, lock Steve Folkes filled in last week at 5/8 against Cronulla. The tackling was a feature of the match. Now, the danger man for Parramatta has to be Steve Mortimer, who can turn a match single-handed. Parramatta has a good record against Canterbury. When they clashed in the first round at Cumberland, Canterbury was the only team Parramatta could beat in the first 4 weeks of the premiership. The Eels won 25-24, 5 tries to 4. The match we're watching now is the return clash at Belmore. Canterbury snatched a win with 4 second-half penalty goals kicked by Steve Gearin. But the tries were scored by Parramatta at the rate of 2-1. Here's Dowling going in for his first try against his old club. Then Mark Levy goes in off this Ray Price pass. But Canterbury's try was one of the best. It was started by Stephen Mortimer and finished off by Stan Cutler and Peter Mortimer. So whichever way it goes, tomorrow's clash will probably be close. At Parramatta's final training session, I talked to Terry Fernley and asked him if a fair share of the ball from scrums was his main concern.
Well, it's vital that we get up as half share of the ball, and we did very well against Cronulla, and then
his 2 tries absolutely
gave us a bad time in the scrums, didn't they? And,
yeah.
It's so important that we do get fair possession of the ball.
What was the problem last week, do you think?
Oh, I think we lost Bob. If you analyse it, we lost the first 4 scrums when Bobby J was out there, but the first scrum, actually, we had the ball in the second row, and for some reason I got back to them, and I don't think Edgy's legs are that long. And then the 4th scrum, really, we had a trap and they pushed us off it. So, you know, it could have been a different story if Bob had stayed on, and then we got very loose in the scrum, and St George were just a bit too smart for us.
Terry, how's Peter Sterling handling the pressure?
Peter, yeah, I think he'll have no trouble handling the pressure. Yeah, Peter's the type of kid. I think when he first came up here at 17, that he, in his own mind, he thought he'd be quite ready for first grade. He's a kid that really thrives on it. And he went out there last year, I thought.
Of their 5/8 Mick Patterson to play. He was one of the form pivots this season, and it's a genuine tragedy that this young star can't be in at the end. His loss has been instrumental. Final,
he thinks Parramatta will win it through the forwards. Australia has made a vital breakthrough in the first.
Quicker than Peard and a useful kicker. However, he's not played very much with the current first-grade team, so teamwork won't be spot on. Canterbury too have had troubles with their 5/8 spot, but Coach Glossop has decided Gary Hughes will be fit after 2 weeks out with a shoulder problem, so back he comes with young Chris Mortimer into the centre beside his brother Peter. Now, possession has been a major Eels problem all this year, and it will be again on Saturday. Pardon me, Paponis will get more than his share of scrum possession, and they've got an informed goal kicker in Steve Guerin, who'll at least match the Eels' point scorer Mick Cronin. Now, I may be letting my imagination run right, but when you're on a losing tipping streak, as I am, you get fantasies, and I see a Canterbury St George grand final. Now, we'll have a full-match telecast for you of this match on Saturday, starting at 6 p.m. And don't forget, Sunday night at the usual big league time slot, 6:30 p.m, a one-hour league special, the greatest game of all. Don't mind me calling him little, because he is diminutive in the physical sense, but he's not diminutive in the sense of being able to run quick and being a very good footballer. I said yesterday, Steve, that I thought you might be wearing the number 7 for Australia if this form is anywhere approached in the future.
I'm not thinking about that at the moment, Rex, just thinking about next week.
Thinking about one game at a time. $400 for... Sorry, wrong one. $400 for the Man of the Match award, $150 for the man most responsible for the best try from yesterday's game. But let's go back to the Cronulla encounter, and we'll have a look at some of the action there. You had a real hot game in this one. Had you G'd yourself up for a particular effort?
Oh, no, it's just good atmosphere at the SCG, and the 13 boys that took the field, they're good boys, and it builds you up too as well.
This is a trite question, I know, but what is it like playing with so many brothers? I mean, it's Mortimer to Mortimer to Mortimer, and then we had Hughes to Hughes to Hughes.
Rugby League and the members of the Controversy Corner panel discuss pertinent league matters.
Yes, well, that's the one, that's the Big League magazine, the official organ of the New South Wales Rugby League, be on sale inside the ground of the Sydney Cricket Ground next to Parramatta Club. Thanks for coming on, Jeff.
That's a pleasure, Rex.
Well, obvious big disappointment for the Parramatta Club, always the bridesmaid, never seemingly the bride.
Yeah, well, luck's not with us. We'll just have to keep trying, Rex.
Any doubts in your mind about the loss yesterday? Was there any turning point? Do you think you might have won it if something hadn't happened?
Well, I thought down in the far left-hand corner, early in the first half, we spilt 2 tries, you know.
Oh, 3.
3, well, yeah, I only saw 2. And I thought if we'd have scored those, we'd have gone on and won.
They all came fairly rapidly, and all in one little part of the field, didn't they?
That's
In
right,
one little
yeah.
scoreboard corner. So it goes.
It's the luck of the
Do you
game.
subscribe to that? Do you think that they might have kicked away if they got those tries early, because there were no points on the board at that time?
No, Rex, never in doubt, really.
And modest. You cannot get over the top of a halfback, can you? Is there any way known to man?
Well, careful, you're bringing out his brother and his father in. They can
Oh, why not? What about his sister? They're going to put her in a football jumper and boots up there too, our old man was telling me. Anyway, you won't concede there was ever any doubt about it.
Oh, no, I was probably being too cheeky there, but Parramatta played well in the first half, and we just hung on there, and second half we thought it would open up a little bit, as it did, and we were lucky enough to come away with the points.
OK, well, let's go back to the game from last week to start with, the Cronulla and Canterbury one. We'll run through some first half highlights here. Now, watching the game, Jeff, as I'm sure you Parramatta people did with a great deal of interest, just to work out tactics and so forth, did you see anything in there that really had you greatly worried? Did you think that this was going to be easy, hard, tough, or how did you react? What was your coach's reaction to it?
Well, we watched it. We knew that Canterbury keep coming up all day. They kept coming up outside the Canterbury players and forcing them back in, and I think that's been their greatest asset in the semi-finals. And although everybody says they've got a great attacking style, they did plenty of grafting work.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they beat Cronulla. They really flogged them.
They flogged them to death, yeah.
That tremendous tackle Steve just pointed out, that's when the arm was broken by Bendel.
Is that the one he broke? Is that right?
Yeah.
And when you look at that, there was tremendous body contact there.
Well, now, I've got another incident we're going to show you later in the game in which I thought he broke his arm, in which he must have just hurt it badly again.
Yeah, well, it was just numb. And then he did a tackle again, and that was it.
Well, I'll show you the other one later, but this is, of course, that first try. That sort of try knocks you, can I use the colloquialism, backside in, doesn't it? I mean, when you're playing against a team that somebody in it can do that to you.
Yeah, well, you seem to be going all right, and then all of a sudden somebody can flash through and score a try. It does.
They're called match winners, those fellas, aren't they? They don't grow on trees either.
They don't grow on trees.
I thought Canterbury was so superior to Cronulla in most aspects of the game last week, it wasn't even funny. But you read about in the paper later that there was a number of the Cronulla players that were covering definite injuries, and perhaps it makes you wonder whether you should get back to the hour. If you're not fit enough to get on the paddock, you shouldn't be there.
But each game of the last 3, Ferris, Canterbury have made the defence of the other side look very ordinary, haven't they? You know, right
14 tries in 3 games.
My word, and no matter how good the defence has been, Canterbury have seemed to bust them all the time, you know, and they're making the other side, as I say, look very ordinary all the time.
Well, I'm just amazed at the improvement in the Canterbury pack. Peter Smith and Greg Cook. Of course, Greg Cook's had a stormy sort of a season, but Peter Smith was looked upon by the Canterbury, obviously by their selections, as a reserve grader. But what happens here? Coveney gets injured, Robinson's injured, and the improvement now with Smith and Cook in the front row, as against with the old general there, I shouldn't say old, George Paponis there. Canterbury with Casillas, folks, they are the form pack at the present time, and they're going to give St George quite a bit of problem next week.
Because there's another aspect that I've deliberated on this week of why Cronulla went so bad. Could it be the fact that there was an announcement made that Provan was not going to continue coaching with the club, and maybe an offer was made or a suggestion was made to one of the senior players on the side that he would be the coach, and now we hear that Tommy Bishop's almost certain to be the coach. Do you think there was a little bit of drama in that that might have upset the team? No, you don't think so?
No, I don't
I'll tell you what, you're naive, Alan. I thought you were, being a top-class journo, I thought you were...
No, I'm not naive at all. I saw Canterbury play, and I give all credit to Canterbury.
Yes, that's an old hackneyed one. We can always give credit to the winners. I think there was a little behind-the-scenes drama there with the Cronulla side too, unless I'm missing, I guess.
You came out last week and said that Alan McMahon was going up to Penrith. Well, there's no truth in that, so there's obviously no truth in that.
That was quoted. That was an Alan McMahon quote.
Well, what do we do? Then we go back to half the west side have been signed up with Manly, and is that their reason for going bad?
Whose reason for going bad?
Is that West's reason for going bad? Because
I think the timing, from what I hear, the timing was pretty bad to start making announcements about coaches dropping out. And I heard that a coaching job was offered to somebody else, and it's not apparently going to that player.
Well, I agree with you, Rex. I reckon at this time there should be no other thoughts going around with a club in the semi-finals, the finals, grand finals, but to get the job done and get it over with. Never mind about 1980. Let's finish 79 first.
Well, that sort of thing out of hand anyway, isn't it?
If that sort of thing worries the players, ought to get rid of the players.
Oh, sure, come on, you've got to finally... You've got two players here. You know, these guys have passed for fairly good players, wouldn't they?
They're very good players.
Wouldn't you rather have your mind completely on football and not worrying about some incidental side issue in an important lead-up to a grand final or final week? Yeah, you wouldn't want to have something hanging over you like a contract or worrying about who was going to coach the side next year, would you?
I think a player should put it out of his mind, but I don't think the club would help by doing things like that.
Yeah, well, that's the contention I'm making. Have you got an opinion on that, or are you going to be cheeky about it?
No, I agree with Jeff, but I think once you take the field, that's all gone by, you know. You're out there to win. So.
Right. All right. Let's have a look at the second half of that game. And this, of course, resulted in the 30-5 win to the Canterbury Bank. 30-15 win to the Canterbury side over Cronulla. There was significance too in this try that was scored when Pearce had virtually not got back on the field. There he is, just coming into the play. He was late back being stitched up. And blimey, didn't he need some stitches? I'm told it was 11 stitches.
Yeah.
Somebody told me he's seen a bullock out at the abattoirs bleeding worse than that didn't get up. And his new nickname's got to be Captain Blood, hasn't it?
I'm glad it was his and not mine.
Yeah, well, you don't have that much blood in you. Yours is straight undiluted alcohol.
One of the big features in this particular game, I thought, was the blotting out of the Sorensen brothers by the Canterbury defence. I saw Canterbury play that game. I'm sure Steve wants to forget about over at Manly there, where Manly looked just
that was a good game.
Back in the premiership contention. And I felt that, you know, that Canterbury at that stage looked like missing out on the preliminary playoffs. But the difference in the Canterbury side now, particularly with the defence, which was highlighted, particularly in nullifying Sorensen, was unbelievable. Steve, just where did this club spirit come from all of a sudden?
Winning games.
The club spirit's been there all year, and it's been there for 2 years or 4 years. I've been there now, but especially this year, we had a task in front of us. One club poached a few players from us. We made the most of what we had, and lucky enough, we're there this Saturday.
Steve, just one little question. Now, how do you fellas motivate yourselves? Do you go on with all this face slapping that we've been reading about? Do you swear at each other?
Is Canterbury the other club that goes for the smack of the face business?
No.
You don't do that?
They got their own swimming pool.
I tell you what, that made me sick this week to watch it last Sunday night on that 60-minute program, which is a good program. I'm not knocking the program. I thought that was the sickest thing I've seen on television, the most denigrating thing for rugby league I've seen in a heap of years. And I was absolutely shocked. I got a lot of time and admiration for Roy Masters, and if that's the way he goes about motivating his team on the basis of geographical situations, we're the poor, broken down people from western suburbs, and we've got to get on top of the silvertails from the better geographical areas. You know, it's just absolute nonsense. It's garbage from the NFL. We don't need it in rugby league, and I'm shocked, absolutely shocked that a man of the calibre of Roy Masters would pull that sort of garbage on a football team.
Yeah, so you've got to worry about, or wonder about, that type of motivation.
And it's like the fighters crossing yourself before you get in the ring. It only helps if you can fight too, you know. It hasn't done him any good at the Sydney Cricket Ground, has it?
I tell you what, I hate to be warming up with Ned Kelly with a bit of a few
Yeah, I
punches.
wouldn't mind going on with a bit of
You'll win. But how'd you be lining up with Sats before the game?
No, thanks, no. That'll be...
You'd up on your reserves before the game started.
It would have been just my luck to pull somebody like that. Listen, I want to show you this incident now, because this is the one I thought that Brentnell broke his arm in during that game. Now, watch him here.
Right.
And you'll see him come away holding his arm, so he obviously he's only re-hurt it there.
Right.
That's when it hurt. That's when the numbness wore off.
Yeah.
That wasn't long after, and Greg felt numbness when he hit Rick Burke, I think it was, and then a tackle later, he found out the numbness went, and yeah.
How many times has he had breaks since he's been with Canterbury? Is that the third one? 2 broken arms and a broken leg?
No, just he's broken both arms.
That was his good arm.
Don't go on with that.
You're lucky if it was an octopus.
That was unfortunate. Mossop's sick sense of humour was going to come out then. I better put that away, Jim. If you see me do that again, will you make me not do that?
I'll slap you on the face.
Step me on the face.
Just going back, Rex, on how teams motivate themselves. It also helps when you've got a reserve grade side playing so well, and we can watch them win, and they won well yesterday, and also we gave a little bit extra effort for the players who were injured, especially for Greg Brentnell, who broke his arm, who would have loved to have been out there yesterday.
Yeah, well, that was a tragedy.
Rex, don't you think it's very significant that the two teams now in the grand finals both have halfbacks who are very nippy and very fast attacking players? The clubs that have the more traditional, what I call traditional now, halfback who does his 37, 38 tackles and the slow mover and a schemer, like they're out of business. And there's the two opportunist halfbacks.
There's only 3 clubs involved in the 3 games, isn't there?
Well, there's a couple of very salient points about both sides. They've both got very experienced hookers. They've both got very sharp halfbacks. They've both got very good goal kickers. You know, I think Cronin's been knocked off now, but...
2 experienced coaches.
Grant and Gearan are both top goal kickers in the sense that they're either in the top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
The halfbacks have scored. How many tries have you scored this year? Don't say you don't know. You probably know exactly, and you can tell me everyone. And I sidestepped at my right foot with this one. How many tries?
I don't know.
Mr. Mortimer, I know they're beautiful boys and they're well built, but what about up here? You don't know. I bet Dad could tell me.
Probably Mum or Dad. Mum's a statistician.
Statistician, is she?
Yeah,
Right.
statistician, sorry.
Yeah, what was I going to say? Let's have a look at Captain Blood. A lot of courage required for a man to stay on with, and particularly what he did to tell the Cronulla doctor to get off. The doctor called out to him, or the trainer called out to him, I can't, you've got to get off the field, you'll bleed to death sort of thing. And Pierce said, well, you know, you'll just have to wait a few minutes, and went back on. But unfortunately, getting all the stitches at half-time, he was 3 minutes late coming out. During that period, there was another try scored and a goal kick, so it was a pretty dangerous situation.
Getting back to Canterbury again, the fellas like Steve Gearan and Anderson and Cutler particularly, they've certainly matured this year. They've been around for a while, but they've certainly, you know, hit their high spots. And then, of course, with the addition of the Mortimer brothers, Canterbury are just playing unbelievable football.
All right, I spoke to George Paponis, whose dad was there, a very proud dad, incidentally. Now, Mr. Paponis doesn't talk a magnificent amount. He talks about as good a English as you talk, Ferris, but he's a very nice man. I had a long conversation with him, but he didn't want to be interviewed. He just wanted to stand with his son. And I was delighted to acquiesce to that because I thought he was a very pleasant man. But here's the George Paponis interview. Standing with a very proud father, Mr. Paponis, and his son, George. And Dad tells me he's always been a league fan since George started playing league.
Well, he was the bloke that went out and got me my first pair of football boots many years ago.
George, this side is firing like a cannon at the moment. Do you believe it?
Mate, we knew we could do it, you know.
By that score, 6 tries and 6 goals?
I know, but I think the biggest thing we've got going for us is that we're young and fit. thanks to Davey Cooper and Davey Irvine, and a lot of good work by Teddy Glossop, and he's instilled a lot of confidence in us, and I hope we've, given him something back today. I think it probably gave him a lot of pleasure in beating Cronulla.
George, some of the tries that have been scored today were out of this world, and a couple of the Cronulla tries were good too.
Well, only scored one.
Two.
Did they?
Yeah,
that's right. That's right, yeah.
You might have been in a bit of a seventh heaven by then.
Yeah. But the two that were disallowed by us, I thought were quite good efforts too.
Well, we won't talk about disallowed tries. I think the referees are getting...
I'm just talking about the lead-up to the tries, you know.
George, the single difference between this Canterbury side and other Canterbury sides has got to be the fact that the ball never seems to die. There's always somebody there to carry it on.
Mate, I'm starting to feel my age. I think they're starting to wear me out of it.
Teddy Glossop hammer this into you at training? Somebody's always got to be there? A man either side?
Sure. We work the ball up and down at training sort of all the time, and our last lap of training every Thursday night is just straight up the field, back and forth, backing up, sort of just to instill that thing of backing up all the time.
You concede yourself now a real chance to win the grand final?
Always thought we were, Rex.
Always thought we were, George, Dr. George. So there you go. Very confident. One young man, George, isn't it? Because you've had a hell of a run with injuries. Will you explain to the viewers what your problem is?
Right. I injured a disc, a cervical disc in my spine against Eastern Suburbs. It's a completely new injury to what I've had before. I was feeling $1 million after a week's in hospital and a week's rest out of hospital, and I probably rushed myself back. It was probably a fault, knowing a bit too much about it, not listening to the specialist advice. I trained about 9 days before I should have, basically because I wanted to try and get back and regain my representative spot. And I virtually went backwards, and I'm back where I started from 4 weeks ago.
Very unfairly, I think it's been suggested that you as Australian captain should signify your intentions for 1982. Nobody else is being asked to tell anyone what they're doing in 1982, but people are saying to some areas of the media. How have you reacted to that?
Well, when I initially saw it, I was a bit astounded. At that stage and at this stage, my main concern is to try and get back for this season. At that stage, I was still hoping to get back for the representative games for this year and play for Australia. And, that was enough on my mind without having to worry about answering or feeling obligated to those people that were asking. I don't think I should answer to the coach of Eastern Suburbs what my intentions are for 1982. If an Australian selector or the president of the Australian Rugby League had have asked me, then I would have given him an honest answer. Obviously, with the disappointment of missing out on the coming series, or the possibility of missing out on the coming series against the Frenchmen, I've had a lot of time to sit down and think about what I want to do, and I've decided to, all going well, to make myself available for the 1982 representative games.
George, there'll be a lot of water flows under the bridge between the end of the season 1981, let alone 1982.
Certainly, that's why I think it's so absurd that, I should have to answer anything like that. As you say, a bloke, touch wood, could go out and break a leg first game next year, Yeah,
But George, your neck problem, or your disc problem, is it going to be a recurring one?
Well, that's obviously what's been on my mind in the last 10 days, and it's been pretty nerve-wracking, but I've been assured that all going well, and, I'm out for 4 weeks. I've been told that there's no definite time period that can be put on it. It might be 3 weeks, it might be 6 weeks, but at the end of that time, then it shouldn't recur.
So you're looking probably now another 4 to 6 weeks out?
Well, I'm looking at, as I'm seeing the specialist weekly, I'll be assessed weekly, and sort of, a weekly assessment made and decisions made as I go along.
Sure, this isn't the first time that this has happened. Like the mere fact that there's something wrong with your spine or something like that is a completely different story. If you do a cartilage or something, it's the same old story, isn't it?
Sure, it's not like a break where you can say you've been plastered for 6 weeks and then a week later you can play. Sure. It's something you can't judge and put a definite time period on.
Well, there's also, you can't work on it either. That's probably the frustrating part.
Well, I'm doing, I'm sort of tending physio daily, and I'll be going out to a gym once I've been given the all clear and start working out there. But, at this stage, and it's only been the last couple of days that I've been pain-free. So I've been able to sleep, let alone get on a training paddock.
It must be very frustrating for you, though, sitting on the touchlines and watching Canterbury. There's been criticism of Canterbury this year too, George, and saying that, St George won the competition in 77, they had a poor year in 78. Is it going to be a Canterbury year like that as St George?
Well, I certainly hope not. The Wednesday night game, the guys went a lot better, and I hope that's some sort of indication as to, you know, what's going to happen.
And so there's still great enthusiasm in the club.
Sure.
I think you've had your share of injuries outside of yourself too in the club.
We've had a share of injuries. I think myself, Greg Brantnell and Chris Anderson haven't played for the last 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, Gary Hughes at the beginning of the season.
3 internationals out of the side.
Well, the same token, George, I think Canterbury are probably paying the price for winning the comp anyway, because each side certainly comes out and really want to get on top of the premiers.
They want to beat the premiers, yeah.
Sure, but, you know, we've got to overcome
That's
that if we
life,
want to go somewhere.
That's effective rugby league life.
But Canterbury have had the benefit of a lot of ball over the years by virtue of the fact that you're in there, and they've built their game around it, and it's a big, as allied with what Noel says, that the other side's trying a little bit harder against the premiers, and having to do without the ball for long periods of time is taking its toll.
Yeah, but I was talking about the game here last week, George. You got in front against Penrith 20-15 and you lost that game, which is not like Canterbury in the past year of 1980, was it?
Sure, I was out at that game and, you know, as much as I hate to admit it, Penrith were the better side on the day, and except for maybe 5 or 10 minutes of that game, Penrith looked dangerous most of the game.
All right, well, thanks, George, for that. You're a member of the panel now, okay? We've cleared the air, I think, as far as the Paponis story. I think it's ludicrous to expect him to declare his intentions when nobody else is.
You're available.
He's available if selected. Right, exactly. That's it. I'm available if selected, too.
Well, you know.
Don't hold your breath.
No, well, all right, I won't wait because a refusal often offends. Let's go to that game last week that we televised insofar as the other game that we have. It's usually a one-way conversation.
That's right.
Yeah.
George, I don't want to draw you anything, but the way referees are refereeing scrums at the moment, you know, with some referees, whoever puts the ball in invariably get it back. There's no risk about that. But with other referees, particularly John Gazer, I'd say, that the scrum normally winds up in a penalty. Do you find a difference between the referees and the feedings of the scrum? Or is it just me?
No, it varies from game to game. It really does. But I think more so this year, the side that feeds gets it, and probably because there's no pressure on the halfback in his own 20 or own half.
Because the differential penalty.
Yeah. I'm not saying that it's a bad rule, but I'm saying it's taken a lot of pressure off the halfback, and you know, he'll cheat a lot more.
Well, I think
cheat?
Well, halfbacks are the cheats, not the hookers.
Right, that's very true.
This try made by Graham, scored by Burns, showed a couple of things. It showed that Graham's a very good footballer, we all knew that. It showed also that young Burns is one of the finds of the season for North Sydney.
Oh, well, not only Burns.
It also showed that Russell Gardner's not as quick as he used to be.
You're right. Spot on, yeah.
What about Phil Ritchie? Yeah, here's a fella come up from nowhere into the first grade side. He's virtually broken even with Mac Krilich, who always gets his share of the ball, and he's confirmed yesterday by his scrummaging yesterday that he's a top prospect.
One of the incredible things about this particular game was the Manly didn't put North Sydney under any pressure when bombs went up, and yet North Sydney put Manly under enormous pressure when they put bombs up.
North Sydney are playing good footy, Rex.
I've got something I want to show you that was given to me by a friend of mine. I say was a friend of mine. I'm going to cut him off my list. Have we got that little key ring? There it is. Have a look at this. A tiny, wee little bear. Now, Bill Kerr, my mate, I had dinner with him the other night, has been a North Sydney supporter since 1922. Bill's of Greek origin and looks it. Like you, George, he's from the Greek islands and so forth. And he's been a North Sydney fan for so long, and every time they beat Manly, he rubs it right into me, and he says, gave me that little key ring with a Kali Koala. And I think, thank you very much, Bill. Very nice of you. On with the business of looking at different highlights out of that game. The Alan Burns try we've looked at. No, this is the Graham try. I suggested to him that he might have played for Tottenham Hotspur, the way he dribbled the ball through the mud and kicked it very, very nicely there to get the right bounce and so forth.
There wasn't too many making much ground on him then.
No, you're right. He's pretty quick.
He got the drop.
The next one we've got coming up for you is the bomb. And this was another near thing for the Manly side. The referee was adamant that it wasn't a try. He was in on the spot. Not easy situations for referees, those. And here's the Smith bombing the try, the one we've already spoken about. We're not trying to rub it into him, but it was there. He was actually over the line when he got the ball from Graham. Now, he dives and dropped it. So it can be done.
Oh, my God.
The appalling try scored by Harris. When I say appalling, I'm not criticising North Sydney or the scoring of the try. I'm criticising Manly's effort at stopping the try. And there's the bouncing ball. Adam unloads and Harris is in for the try. He was one of their very good players yesterday for North Sydney too.
I think you got to comment on Paul McCaffrey's accuracy with the bomb. Every time he puts that ball up, it's in a perfect
on the spot, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, let's have a look at the next item. And this is the Smith try. Now that was, you know, an international footballer trying to take that one, and it looked awful. That looked awful. And that's the place to score him, George. You like to go underneath the post when you can, don't you?
If you notice, he was all on his own, John Dory, then too, though. Usually if there's a bomb up, your wingers will come and help you and cover, and, you know, for the drop ball or something, and he's all on his own.
Well, I said to Ray Ritchie after the game, and I hasten to add, Ray's under enormous pressure, as any losing coach is. Ask Len Stacker, ask Bill Anderson, ask people that have been through the hoop, and Harry Bath this season. What does a coach do when his players don't do what he wants?
Well, you don't smack him. But Steve Ella must be a player of the future, and as I can't mention too much about him, I thought he had a tremendous game, but the outstanding player in the field to me was the halfback, Peter Sterling. Had a magnificent game, this fellow. He attacked, he tackled everything that moved off the ground. He was around his legs. He kicked the ball for touch. He kicked it over the top of it. Anything possible in rugby league, this fellow was able to do, Peter Sterling.
Well, Ray Price has taken over a new role. He's Peter Sterling's dresser, as you can see.
Cole, what would you say Balmain's biggest problem is? I've watched them a couple of...
Well, they seem to lack enthusiasm. There's no confidence in the team. Some of their passing are going across the field too instead of going up the field. Olsen Filipana brought a bit of it back when he did run forward with the ball, but there was no one linking up with him at all times.
Right, let's have a look at Thompson, tackled by Stevens and Hilditch. A pretty solid whack.
Oh, wasn't it?
Look at that one. Ooh. That brought the, what they say, rattled your teeth.
Yes, it did rattle him all right.
And a very fine tackle by one of the undersung prop forwards going around Sydney, Ron Hilditch. I think he's a good one. There's a blockbuster on Whittaker.
And he finished up with the ball.
Yeah, right, finished up with the ball.
McCarthy tackler, he hurts you when he hits you.
There's plenty of him there too, isn't there?
He's a very enthusiastic player.
Oh, he's a good player.
The high work rate. Bomb taken by Ella. Just a little snip.
A very vital one, right on half-time this one, Rex, and Ella jumped high in the air, right in front of the goalpost here. You've seen take it above all the others. Brilliant take by Steve Ella. Brilliant take.
And even referees have problems during the games, Cole, don't they?
Yes, it was, as I said, there wasn't a great deal of mud, but there was a little bit of mud in the centre, and referee Barry Bradstack had a bit of trouble with the whistle. It was rather funny. I heard one of the crowd, or even with the headphones on, I could hear the people singing out, "Don't take the water out, team, let him keep it where it is." I didn't want to hear the whistle again. A funny one.
George, like you said before, with that bomb for the John Dorahay had no support. I noticed then in the Parramatta side there, plenty of support in front of him.
If you'd have had it dropped it, there were blokes around to cover it up.
Well, he had so much trouble, Rex, that he had to get a replacement of a whistle. That wasn't enough to wash out. They had to give him another whistle.
I just wondered, looking at this snippet, what the hell Percy Knight was complaining about, because you see his player Davidson deliberately dragged the player across the sideline, and now Percy, the captain of the side, comes over and sort of remonstrates with the referee, and I find that, I don't know what he said.
Well, there he is, Rex. Now, to me, that's... Well, he's a captain, George. Now, there's no future on that one. He's definitely pulling... I'd have been remonstrating with a player instead of remonstrating with a referee.
I would have thought he would have gone to Davidson and said, don't do stupid things and concede penalties.
Yes.
All right, now let's get on with that game yesterday. This is the Newtown and Norths game. George, you no doubt have seen replays of this.
Yeah.
Were you impressed with the North Sydney form in the second half?
Well, I've watched the last two games Norths have played, and, you know, they're a good outfit this year. They've got a big pack of forwards, and they're playing well. And... you know, I thought they deserved their win. They didn't play well in the first half, but they came back well in the second half, and Stan Jerd and Paul McCaffrey, I thought, played very well.
Well, I thought it was very much a game of two halves, all Newtown in the first half and all North in the second half. Let's have a look at a couple of things from this game. We've got a good solo run from the Newtown winger Ferguson, who's as good a stepper as you'll see around. What do you think of this bloke, George?
Very quick. Do you think he should have passed the ball there?
Yep. Yes, I do, but I'm still talking about his ability to... That's the sort of running Ray Ritchie used to do as a winger for Manly.
I remember him.
That's one try to square off. I've told him what I think, and he's entitled to...
I said to chap yesterday at the footy, where have you had this fella all the time? And I thought that young Ferguson was a young chap, you know, young player, and he said he's 26, you know. There must be plenty of good players around, I reckon.
The kick by Wilson, the catch by Sigsworth, the kick by Sigsworth, the chase, it was good stuff. But Sigsworth then makes the break on this occasion. I believe that there was a possibility he should have taken the opposition on or passed, but he kicked again.
And knocked the ball on Hetherington.
And there's the ball goes to North Sydney, and I think there were opportunities lost. The Popchi try from a tap restart, I haven't seen a better move work than this one. It just worked like clockwork, because they all look great when they come off. But they don't often come off, but that one didn't. It looked great.
Yeah, great try.
And then there was this little bit of play that wouldn't have given North Sydney a lot of supporters a lot of confidence coming up from a tap restart. Oops. But that was before the Reformation, shall we say. And then there was a good break by Newtown and the pass rule forward. You'll see a fairly heavy hit there, not a fairly heavy hit, Oh, that was Stan Judd getting hit heavy.
Ran too far.
Yeah.
There it was.
That was the first half.
Yeah.
That was the first half, when you couldn't say too much about the North Sydney side at all. They didn't play well.
We're just looking now at the good break by Stephen Blythe. I think you'll see him, the crisscross move there, and he comes right into the clear, and this pass was ruled forward.
No better toiler in the game than Stephen Blythe.
That could have been a very interesting one, because he was definitely going to score. Anyway, the referee was on the spot and ruled it that way.
I think he was correct too, Rex.
I think so. I'm not arguing that. And the bomb from Norths put Popchi under a lot of pressure, but fullbacks don't always get a second bite of the cherry. No. He did.
Yeah, I reckon.
So there it is.
When you think that if East had been beaten by Norths, which they very nearly did, and the Balmain thing, Norths could have almost been in front in this competition.
They could have. They've got a pretty good record. South Sydney defeated 22-7, Saints 39-10, Parramatta 15-13, Manly 23-4, Newtown 11-9, and they've had a 1 point loss to Eastern Suburbs 17-18. It's a pretty good record.
Pretty good record.
All right, we'll finish the first half on this note. The City to Surf Fun Run will be here soon, and I've no doubt everybody's out getting their gear ready, but Nike jogging shoes are the shoes to wear. The Nike Yankee is just one model from the fabulous Nike range. Nike's I want to read. I'd like to show you the selections made by Cole, Noel and Ferris for the state team to be selected. This is Ferris Ashton's team: Greg Brentnell, Kerry Boosted, John Rebo, Mick Cronin, Steve Rogers, Rocky Laurie, Steve Mortimer, Ray Price, Des O'Reilly, Paul McCabe, Jeff Masterman, Craig Young, John Harvey, and his reserves are Sigsworth, Cleal, Regan and Coveney. Kelly's selections are Brentnell, Rebo, Boosted, Cronin, Rogers, Lamb, Mortimer, Price, McCabe, O'Reilly, Masterman, Young, Harvey, with the reserves McKinnon, Cooper, Sterling and Dorahy. Pearce's selection: Brentnell, Boasted, Rogers, Cronin, Rebo, Laurie, Mortimer, Price, McCabe, O'Reilly, Craig Young, Masterman and Harvey. Mossops you won't see up there, but I'll tell you they're exactly the same as Pearce's, except that my reserves are different, and I've gone for Cleal, Rebo, Jensen and Hughes. No, I'm sorry, I've got a winger in. I've got Anderson in instead of Rebo, and Rebo as a reserve. So that's the way we see the situation.
You've got Rebo in the team?
I've got him in the reserves. I like the wingers they had. Boosted and Anderson, they'll do me. Rebo's the man that's got to force his way into the side. Anyway, we've got no say in it. All we can do is talk about what we think's going to happen. And I've got very interesting theories about the second game, but there's all sorts of footballers you can put in the return match, depending on the result of the first one. We might get Dr. George out of retirement.
Is Artie going to play?
Okay?
Is Artie going to play?
Yes, Artie's going to play.
He'll be there.
He'll be there. I've got a few letters here, ladies and gentlemen. I'd just like to read a few. Fellows will give us a bit of a go for a minute. I've got a letter from a Mrs. Michelle Field of the ACT complaining about journalists reporting on rugby league in Canberra. And this was sent to me, and the article was sent. I'll read the article to you, and you can draw your own conclusions. This is an article written by a gentleman by the name of Ian Warden. I make no comment on it except to say that it confirms a lot of the things I think about some people that write the game. Bored by the game and singularly appalled by its supporters, I left while the second half was still young. This is the City Country game in Canberra. Just as some people suggest that Canberra is too genteel a place to be besmirched by casinos or by a motor racing circuit, I find myself wondering if we should ever offer Canberra as a venue for a major rugby league fixture again. Mingling with a barbaric crowd on Saturday, I felt that the Bruce Stadium, normally occupied by the relatively civilised patrons of soccer and athletics, had been invaded by some alien and very unattractive beings. I suppose that one can explain the ugliness of most of the male rugby league supporters by the fact that they've played the game themselves and have had their faces progressively sculpted by their opponents' foreheads and their gargoyle countenances welded to bodies made gross by indolence and by beer, made them seem like a Hogarth etching of low-life come hideously alive. George, you're an awful-looking man.
I'll take offence at that.
It was small wonder that some unseemly pugilism broke out among them, obliging the brave gendarmerie to make some arrests. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. What did I say the name was? Mrs. Michelle Field, for that very edifying article in your local press. I would stop getting that paper. A goose, an absolute goose. I have a letter from a gentleman, Arch McKean, in Leon Lyons, is it, in the ACT? He's a digger from WW2. His father-in-law is Jim Reynolds, who's 80 years of age and a rugby league fan, always watches 7 shows, and I told him I'd give him a mention. I've done just exactly that. Chris Anson from Surrey Hills. We've got a picture there I want to show you. This is a disgraceful thing. Noel Kelly backing away from a 5'4" midget, Tommy Bishop, in a test match at 1966 at the Sydney Cricket Ground, and the other man on the right is Cole Pearce. Did he actually throw a punch at you that day?
No, what
Fell
actually,
over, didn't he?
What actually happened? I said, stop it, Noel, and you put your hands up. Remember that?
I always did, Cole.
Oh,
You
yes.
wouldn't hit a little halfback, would you, honestly? Anyway, that was the picture of Tommy Bishop and Noel Kelly and Cole Pearce with the New South Wales and Great Britain touring side, featuring Bishop swinging the punch that threw him off his feet. And then there was the letter from Bob J of Auburn, re games cancelled at the Sydney Cricket Ground. This was a most interesting letter because this gentleman, who's been a rugby league supporter for so many years, talks about walking from the railway up to the Sydney Cricket Ground, up for Bow Street, because there were no trams. And he says, do you remember those days, Cole?
I read about those, Rex.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
walking from Central up for Bow Street, we met two mates coming back who told us that the game was off. So he's talking about a game, that was the only game he's ever heard of that was put off at the sports ground. In those days, there were no trams and very few other ways of finding out what the results of games were. By the way, I saw the great Harold Horder play. The chant in those days used to be, give it a order, give it a order. From what I remember, there's not much of him, but he had a step and a half both up the paddock. Now, something I think is unique, the only player of any game to get a shower of cash at the Sydney Cricket Ground was the great and one and only Vic Hay. Evidently, they threw money at him. I don't know whether they hated him for throwing money or what reason, but there it was.
That was in a schoolboy fixture, though, was it not, when he played for the schoolboys?
Yes, it could be, that's right. And from Mrs.
Was
Biddy
that Horder
Lyons...
with a H, Rex?
Eh?
That Horder with a H, is it?
Yeah, order. He spelled it order. O-R-D. An Australian rules fan from Victoria, this lady, Biddy Jones, writes, now watching rugby league in New South Wales and enjoying it, I show the Manly men how to take those bombs up their Brentnell she's got. I thought you'd like that, George. Manly is no good in the wet because they are a clean team and want to stay that way. Well, I don't know about that. That's, I think, a little bit malicious. And a final letter from Ray Burford of Seven Hills, who's a rugby league fan for 50 years. He's got 4